I tell you what, we will call this meeting to order at 7:06. If you will all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. So I'd just like to ask for a moment of silence today. We lost a student member of our school community, H.A. Salisbury, a fifth grader who has been a beautiful and wonderful part of TIS for some time. His family and H.A. were known to many people in district, many students in Little League. Obviously all the kids at TIS, kids at TMS knew him because of Little League. His sister Cara goes to the high school. And so they are known there too. So I just wanted to ask for a moment of silence for the loss of our student H.A. Salisbury, fifth grade student at TIS.
Thank you, everybody. So, just to kick off, thank you for giving up your time for this special meeting due to the budget. For those of you that either watched the council meeting or were aware, the council approved a budget which in essence reduced the BOE proposed budget by about $400,000. Tomorrow, the council will now present to the public their approved budget recommendation. If I understand right, then Thursday they take it to the senior center to do another presentation before going to referendum then on the 7th. So right now it is still the proposed budget until after the referendum. But what we are here to do now is tomorrow during the presentation by the council, the Board of Ed will have a few moments to brief essentially what this reduction, how we're going to deal with the reduction, what that's going to mean from our perspective. So our intent here tonight was to discuss that. I want to again draw the point that it is a reduction from what we proposed, what was in the town manager's budget, again of about 400K. So what we've asked Dr. Willett to do, I know many of you gave some ideas, some suggestions. We've asked Dr. Willett to kind of run the bases and provide some thoughts and some insights in there. And then we will discuss and try to come up with a plan. There is, just to be clear, there is no concrete deliverable. You know, it's not like when we were doing the Board of Ed budget where we had to hand something over to the town. In this case, they give us the number. It's up to us to figure out how we use that. We have the benefit tomorrow in being able to articulate to the public what that's going to mean because they are our stakeholders and they need to have that information so they can then take direct. My hope, again, I want full and robust conversation. We've got a lot of good ideas. We've got a lot of things we hope to be able to protect. I know Dr. Willett and his staff, all of us are going to do everything we can to try to find alternate funding, alternate revenue, you know, to try to protect some of these going forward. We're not done, but we do have to plan. With that, Dr. Willett, if you'll kick off and give us an overview. Dana, I see you there online, so can you hear us? Okay.
Do we have to do shaking hand?
No, yep. My apologies. Thank you, Dan. So, Dan pointed out accurately so that the next step in the agenda is public participation. The members of the Tolland Board of Education welcome members of the public to share their thoughts and ideas at this time. When appropriate to do so, members of the board administration may respond to comments However, in consideration of those in attendance and in an effort to proceed in a timely manner, follow-up discussion may need to take place outside of the meeting setting. And there is nobody in the room, so we will keep an eye on the Zoom. If you would like to speak, please start with your name and address for the minutes and raise your hand. Again, if you would like to speak or have any comments for the board, please raise your hand. I think I see Chris. Please.
Chris Jimenez, 68 Anthony Road. I just wanted to start off by saying how extremely disappointed I am in the proposed budget that was voted on by the town council. Throughout this whole budget process, we've heard about the boogeyman that is, raising the mill rate in town. There was a proposal on the floor when the town council was voting on it to have a mill rate of 3%, which still was in favor of giving the Board of Ed what the Board of Ed suggested. That failed, obviously. So it goes to show you that it is never about the mill rate, and it's always about defunding our schools. I am extremely disappointed, and hopefully that in future we can do better.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Going once. All right. We'll close public participation. Now, Becca, if you could give us a brief synopsis of what you've determined, and then we can start the conversation from there.
Okay. So, as requested, there was a communication today that had, or the communication recently that had some Q&As from some board members. So what I did here is I took my best shot at kind of consolidating and letting you know what we had already reduced to date, and then suggesting, based on the information that we've talked about prior, when we looked at the crosswalks, these are not actually anything new to you. These were all part of the crosswalks before. And it's based on the feedback and information that I got to the board during the span of the whole process. So you'll notice that on the dashboard, there was a document posted as a draft form to try to address the questions that you asked, some of you had asked tonight, and also give you a way forward. So that's accessible to you if you want to open that up, but I can kind of read from it here. So as you know, the Board of Ed adopted budget was 45,071,148. The council reduced that to 44,671,148. That was a reduction of about $400,000. The increase for the board is 1.681 million, and it was an increase of 3.91%. The reductions for the 4.84% had a series of program reductions, but the 4.84 also had the following staff reductions. So I'm just kind of setting up that what comes next. 4.84, that was the Board of Ed budget, had a 1.0 ELA teacher, 1.0 social studies, 1.0 science teacher, 1.0 PE teacher, and 1.0 para-educator, as well as discontinuing a grant position. And so that equated to 5 positions in one discontinued grant position. The additional reductions needed to reach the 3.911. First, we went back and looked at the energy contracts we have since the last budget iteration, and this one locked in our rates for diesel, oil, and electrical. So you'll notice for diesel oil, we saved about 15,000, oil heat about 9,000, electricity about 2,000. We made a $2,000 reduction in professional services. We cut pretty much all the Promethean boards, and we're recommending an ERF utilization of 70,000 for special ed tuition. That's the new program reductions on top of the program reductions we've already had. The additional staff reductions on top of their staff reductions from the 4.84 to get to the 391 are 1.0 ELA, 1.0 science, 2.0 sixth grade teachers, and 1.0 FTE librarian at the high school, or replacing the job with a library manager. That would make the reduction in total to get to 391 on the staff side, 2 ELA teachers, 2 science teachers, and these are high school, 1 social studies teacher, a PE teacher, a paraeducator, 2 6th grade teachers, and a 1.0 librarian. And that sheet shows the 484 and the 391 together. That's what it would take to get down to the 400,000 reduction. So those additional staff, in addition to the program reductions, should close the gap and get us to that point or budget point. What was also thrown out there, some board members had asked a few questions. But at the bottom of that sheet, and I'll go to the questions in a minute, I also want to point out ERF utilization. ERF balance was 157, 284. We are adding to it 172.5. That was, as you might recall, the transfer that was requested. Actually, that was I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I think, or so. That would make it 329, but we're also utilizing 50 for servers, as I recall, and then the potential utilization for special ed tuition in this budget would be 70, so that would bring the remaining balance down to 209. To give you a sense of where the ERF could go if you utilized 70,000 to pay special ed tuitions out of next year's budget, which is a line that's 25. So that kind of summarizes where you could go. Q&As. So I guess some of you had submitted some questions. One of them was we reduced the salary line by 1%. And so I talked with various staff on this, and while the salary line is budgeted for existing positions and throughout the year there's going to be turnover, we don't advise reducing this line. That 250 figure is larger, and to give you an example, it's larger than than most of the remaining balances we've had. So if you look at 2011 to today, 7 of those years have been well below that. We had only a certain amount left. 7 years in that span of time were well below that figure. 4 years that were not were crazy anomaly kind of years where we had this state budget crisis and then we had the COVID crisis. So those 4 years, there's never been anything like those 4 years in the previous history. So that's a big data point skewer. And that means that between 2012 and 2024, 11 of the 12 years, we were either below or 7, where there was 4 really strange anomaly years in there. So there was 1 year that was over on its own, but most of them are not. So it's kind of risky. And if you take a look at the fact that the salary line is usually offset by other lines that are typically over for a variety of operational needs, underfunding that line, not matching the funding to the number of people, could increase the chances that district's in deficit by the end of the year. It's additionally based on assumptions made on prior year data that include some of the greatest outliers or years of fluctuation we've ever experienced. Again, referencing those 4 years. And it's not really what we have for circumstances right now, and definitely probably not what we're going to have moving into the future with respect to how things are heading out of those kind of crazy times. We don't have anywhere near as many vacancies as we used to have, and even though there are those 6 right now, I'll get to those in a minute. We've talked about before how those are related to special education, so I'll cover that in a sec. The 250 figure would also be about 10 turnovers, and we don't usually have that number of turnovers in a year. That would be far more than what we're projecting for having in fiscal year 25 for certified salaries. And the figure is larger than what was left in line 111 for the last 3 years. And it was actually overspent one of those last 3 years. So it's a very risky thing to do. It's based on, the years of great anomaly, and it's usually offset by other things. So it's just a risky thing to do. With respect to the paras, those para positions are required for special education services, which we've kind of talked about before. We have to cover the work that they do. So to give you an example, the non-certified subline is over by 34% because we use non-certified subs to cover the holes because we can't hire those positions. And that's over by 34% now. By the time we get to the end of the year, that percentage will be much higher. So, those lines may, they may have these positions at the moment for trying to fill. And we've also talked about how we may have to fill them with ABISs, which is called, these are jobs that associate behavior intervention specialists or others, if we can't get people to take the jobs, that are those para jobs. So right now we're spending in other areas and going over in other areas in order to cover the fact that those aren't there. So that is kind of a figure that, while that's a set figure that looks like it's available, we're overrunning other lines to cover it. So it's really not, especially if you look at our end of year balances as you go along. And then ERF utilization, that was a question, can we utilize it? We recommend using about 70,000 for ERF utilization at this point. The reason why you might not want to do more than that is that, hopefully an ideal healthy balance would be about 1.5 to 2%, maybe somewhere in the 640 zone if we can ever get it up to that. That would give us enough if the tuitions, if a couple of tuitions just sneak up on us and go over at some point at a very bad time of the year and we end up with a couple 100,000. For instance, right now we have 4 or 5 kids moving into LEAP. If any of those 4 or 5 kids couldn't be served by LEAP, they would be outplaced possibly. And that can be in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So that fluctuation can be significant and it can sneak up on you in the last minute. Like these are being brought into that program right now. So if that ever had, couldn't be accommodated that way, those would have to be something we would have to take. So keeping that ERF balance healthy for something like the special ed fluctuations is going to be important, especially going into the future. We're really nervous about that line. And if you look at the inflation rate over the last 12 months, everything in this budget is going to be, these dollars are going to be worth less across the board. And we just have to keep that in mind over the next few years. So that's just something to keep, to consider with respect to these types of things. Reducing administrators came up, and it's probably very difficult for, on the board side to kind of really get a full appreciation for this, but you've seen their presentation again. You've done the instructional rounds. Most of the things you observed in the instructional rounds would not be possible if it weren't for the supervisors that are part of the district or other admin. In this case, I think the question was specifically around supervisors. And as it is right now, we're really understaffed. I mean, if you take a look at other districts, they have people that we do not in this area. And that's been demonstrated for those of you who've been here a while. That's been demonstrated a couple of times. So reducing any supervisor position just means, for any of those admin positions, would mean putting more burden on top of an already burdened people, while we also are taking on the additional burden of the curriculum liaison, accumulator, grade leader group. It's just not, that's going to cause that would not be it would make what's already difficult even harder. And I fear you would lose good people and balls will be dropped. We can't keep, I can't do it. I just don't have enough people to do what I'm doing right now. So if we don't have, these people, we're not going to be able to do what you want us to do. The instructional around stuff you observed, those are the kinds of things, those programs and those things go away. People can't do them. Plus they have to take on additional evaluations. The new evaluation plan has a lot of great things that the state wants us to do, but they're going to be a tremendous amount of work for him. The admin will be doing more work on evals now due to the new Connecticut state's eval requirements. Far more work than they were doing in the past few years. So while the number of people go up that they have to evaluate, for instance, happens, and we have the additional burden of all the additional work that now will have to occur, it's just going to break people's backs for review here. So it's not something that I would advise at this moment. SRO, I'm not getting the feeling that people want fewer of these at this moment in time. I think that people want to see us increase our security presence, either security officers that are armed or new arrangements with the town for expanded SRO. There are a couple of ways to skin that cat, but it depends on how you want to approach it. You can talk about that, but for instance, in some towns, they just deploy state troopers into the schools, but those troopers aren't paid for by the schools. So that's one possibility. Another is, we have SROs through 2 MOUs, one with the state and one with the municipality for basically the 24 hours of up to 5 SRO. If we could change that arrangement, we could hire more than the 24-hour SRO, because we have the ability to hire 2 24-hour SROs right now. That might make those jobs more appealing, but again, that's talking about more, not less. And then armed security officers, there would have a cost. There would be, an ad not to take away. So I don't think that there would be an appetite for that publicly. You certainly can do it, and if you did, that would save anywhere from 50 to 70, but it's going to leave holes that I don't think people are comfortable with. So that's my run through of what I think there's somewhat some of the needs that are out there.
Thank you, sir. So let's go around the room. Right, go ahead.
Well, okay. I'll be the first to jump at this. I just want to preface to say that I was, as well, like Chris, very disappointed in the town council's kind of axing of 400,000 from the Board of Ed, but don't worry, you'll get your old couch picked up for free. And I would also like to say I'm not in favor of axing any teachers. 0. So let's find the money in other areas. So I just did want to, this Promethean board, you had mentioned that there was $30,000. Didn't we vote at one point to use some funds at the ERF for that in a meeting?
It's for the server.
Oh, for the server, was okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify, there was something in my head about that. Excuse me?
A long time ago, there was some talk of that.
Yes, all right, okay, I wasn't too sure what that, I just calling that. Okay, and what is so you mentioned that you would prefer that we have, was it 600,000 in the ERF one for the special education? Do we know what the average pull from that for the special education is on a yearly basis that we say the last even 2 or 3 years? Are we drawing from that for special education or haven't?
Well, we have drawn from that in the past year or two. Trying to remember, it was 200 something thousand. If you give me just a minute, I'll look back. We did draw.
Okay, over the budgeted line item, over the budgeted special education line item.
We
correct?
used it to offset, we used an ERF figure, I can check in a minute, to offset last year's special ed. Okay, and we're getting hit with higher and higher.
No, I'm just trying to gather what our usual, I would say, 5-year average and what we've been pulling extra to cover that line item, that's all.
Well, we haven't been using it regularly to cover that line item. We haven't had enough in it to use it regularly to cover such a line item, but we did use it I think it was last fiscal year 23 or 22 to do that.
So we're not pulling from it every year then?
No.
No, we don't have enough money in it to pull from it like that for that purpose. Special ed would be a biggie. We have pulled from it for other things. And last year, I think we pulled from it for special ed.
Okay.
Too.
Okay. Then you mentioned these evaluations by the state. What is the increased, I guess, is it a mandate, a recommendation, or
Yeah, so.
calling extra hours of personnel?
So, it's hard to do this succinctly, but, instead of 1 rubric now, we're gonna be using 12 rubrics. And when you go through to evaluate, one of the things you evaluate on are indicators, and state has these indicators. And, you used, indicators, one of them is CCT 2017 teachers, and it has 4 domains, many indicators. So instead of using 1 or 2 instruments, the state has now said, you're going to be using multiple instruments, or we recommend multiple instruments. So they now have to use many different instruments. Now it's in a much more narrative format. So instead of tagging certain indicators, throwing in tags, there's a lot more writing. You know, and in general terms, it's seen as overall better for teachers in their profession overall, because it's more feedback, more narrative feedback. You know, but less cookie cutter, but it's definitely a much heavier lift for the people doing the evals. And so now what took maybe, now it's probably a ratio of 1 to 3 it'll take as much time in, you know, to do 1 as it used to take to do 3 in the past. Probably is an accurate representation.
And you use the word recommended by the state. Is this something that's mandated that we start this year, or can we not?
Well, it's mandated.
How does it work with the union in regards to the evaluation for these teachers?
Yeah, they call it non-negotiables. There's a set of things that are non-negotiable. And it is mandated that we change it. And so everybody across the state has been changing it. And I don't want to get into a long narrative on this, but they gave us very little time to do this. And so we've been working very hard to try to get it done. And in all frankness, it'll probably be much more like a 3-year process. But for the first, we have to have it ready for July of this year.
No, that's what I'm trying to get at, if it's mandated starting X date or whatnot.
So, yeah, we have to have a
Something
new
we're
plan
trying
in
to
place
implement that's
by
maybe not
July.
needed.
And we're gonna hit it. But it's a lot of work to get this done, and it's also a lot of work to implement this. So anyway, the point is, the people you're talking about are already running moment to moment. You know, I just don't see how we're gonna be able to do that. I just don't see how that would work.
Yeah, no, I just, you had mentioned that, I just wanted to see what it was all about. All right, thanks. And the other thing I had in my mind from the walkthrough at the high school, whenever it was a few months back before we started the budget process, I know the IT director, I believe it was, that we spoke with, Tony was in the room, or Bill, or Dan, or whatever, a bunch of us were together. He had mentioned that he had several of his staff for hours and hours and hours and hours on end, like calling the state, calling South Windsor, like doing data entry stuff for an IT person that's probably making $80,000 versus a data entry person who might be making a fraction of that. Are you aware of this situation?
Well, the state of Connecticut requires a tremendous amount of compliance-related reports and data. And the people that are in this district, there's fewer in this district than there are in some districts that are around us of the similar size dynamic. And the people that are with us have been with us for some time. So, you know, what they're making because they've been here for a while. But they wear many hats. And so I am aware they're doing a lot of data, some of them, because we have to do a lot of data because the state requires us to do a lot of data. I don't think we can add any positions in that area right now. Although we do try to be creative in every way we can. The last few years, we lost the ed tech coaches. There used to be 6 coaches that are gone. You know, we lost support that supported that group. We lost the ed tech staff member who used to work on some of that stuff that you're talking about, and they were eliminated. So what remains are pure IT individuals. There's 3 of them, and they do everything. So they definitely do data, but they also do, you know, running around to fix servers, fix machines. They do everything. So he's right in that they're literally doing many different things. And in another industry, you might have the luxury of having somebody who's going to be your data analyst for 50 or 60. But we don't have that. We have everybody doing everything. And then some of that overlaps into your administrators. So we have administrators doing things like we have co-teaching uses a studio data product. Google has a Google Studio. And so we do a lot of compiling of data through Google Studio that no IT person is involved with at all. That might in another place be a data analyst who does that, but it's another, that would be another good example of that, our admin. You know, so we actually run quite, if you want to use the word efficiently, quite efficiently with respect to our IT people, because we don't have a lot of them, and they do just about every task there is from an IT perspective, and those they don't do are absorbed by the themselves.
Yeah, no, I completely hear. I wasn't saying that they weren't doing, I just thought
Oh, no,
it
I'm
was
not-
odd
I'm
that
just-
we were having somebody of a higher caliber position making phone calls to the state and doing petty little, oh, one kid's absent here or there, like, it just seems, I don't know, I'm just thought in my mind, it's kind of hard, somebody's expertise in computers and IT and stuff is doing that sort of work for the district, to me, so. The other thing I, would like to bring up, and I think it's a talk to possibly some savings or money moving around or time of position is the computer upgrades. If there's a possibility, I know we talked about it with the IT guy, and I know buying it and getting it here, because it was like $400,000 for all the, was it the high school or whatever, for the computer.
You mean the servers or the one?
No, not, there was, yeah, there was some sort of system upgrades for the window,
Windows
10 going into 11.
Yeah, we have.
Not the service that he needs for the Board of Ed, but for the school itself.
The windows.
So I know, but there was, because the Windows falls out of, support, I think it's next October, I believe it was, don't quote me on that. So it's like 15 months from now, I think it is. So we had a discussion with the IT gentleman about possibly doing some now and some, part this year and part next year, but the dilemma was making sure you're able to get the supply chain in order so you can have everything in stock and have the staff, change everything out. Would have to be over the summer if we waited till next year's budget, so I don't know if there's still some sort of finagling around with that line item, or, is it just a thought in people's minds regarding that line item as a big line item, but maybe there's some wiggle room in when we can do things and not do things. Or not. So. All right, that's it for now. Sorry to ramble. I don't know. I got about 6 different things in my mind.
These
So
are good. We'll be back.
thank you.
Ready?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So the first one is around the salary line. Cause on budget question 43, we were told that fiscal year 23 was under by 4.8%, 22, 4.1%, 21, 6.2, which I get was the pandemic year, 23.7, 19, 2.1, and 18, 2%. So now I'm looking at this chart that you have with the numbers. And first of all, we're missing a year or two here because it goes from 21 to 22 to 18, 19. So something is not there.
Those are end of year balances. So which
I'm
BQ,
not-
It's missing.
which BQ, well, it's missing because the 4 anomaly years, that's referenced as the typical years. The 4 anomaly years are the COVID years and the state budget years that are so massively high. They're a misrepresentation. They're an outlier.
But we only have one, to me, in your answer to budget question 43, fiscal year 21 was 6.2. The rest of them were kind of the same, 4.8, 4.1, 3.7, 2.1, 2%, like nothing like wildly out of place. So if you took out 21, which is the 6.2, and average those other 5 years, it comes to 3.34%. So then if I go back to these numbers, I'm having trouble thinking that, it was only $9,800, like, because the salary line's pretty high. So if
It's only-
21 was,
That's accurate.
pardon me?
That's an end of year accurate balance.
So are these percentages maybe not accurate then? Because it's weird.
I
It's
mean,
just hard
I
to
don't know. I can go back and check.
marry
I
these
guess-
up a little bit.
I guess they're looking, and again, if you look at those percentages coming out into COVID years, right? The COVID years are the highest, so let's say March of 20 through 21 and even into, a little bit now. Then take a look at 18, 19, 2% versus 6%. you know.
Right, I
So-
took the 6%
So I'm
out.
just saying, when you average percentages, and we're talking about like really different figures. We're talking about end of year balances in actual dollars and averaging percentages, which is a small proportion of positions that are left. So these two data figures do not work well together. What I'm trying to say is, if you underfund that line by 250, you haven't had that amount even at your end of year balances the last couple of years. And even in the salary line itself you're referencing line 111. There hasn't been 250,000 in that salary line the last 3 years at least.
Is that because the money is moved to other areas to cover you know what I mean? So
Some of those
so
things.
here's a teacher that's left and then we had to get a sub, so now some of that salary is moved to the sub line and that's
Well,
why.
it's a good
I mean, I'm
question.
just trying to understand what's
Yeah,
going on.
that's a great question. We don't move money around here because we.
No, I understand you're not
overspend the
moving
line.
money, but you're spending it.
But, in some line, what typically happens here is lines will be overspent and then covered by lines that are underspent. But even in 111, regardless of that dynamic, you still haven't had 250 in that. These figures don't mesh well together. So if you really want to know where you're at, that line, I think it was like 189 and then negative 32 and then 185. If you're looking at line 111 over the last, I think, 3 years. So that salary line, you know, by itself, in the one pager, it rolls up into all the other salary lines. So it might be as one figure offset by paras, but it's not as flexible as you think. And if you look at the end of year balances, the point that Ms. Esau is making is that sometimes at the end of the year, we'll make purchases as end of year purchases. Those end of year purchases have most often been used to offset future budgets. So it's very difficult to say what that would actually be otherwise. And let's say you didn't make your end of year purchases and you let money roll into your ERF fund. You know, the town's paradigm for that is a minimum baseline of 10%. We haven't gotten anywhere near that, even if we were rolling over money every year, even if we did what the law, you know, possibly gave us the ability to do, which is 2%. Our budgets are 0.4s left, you know, what's left is 0.4 or less than that. So it's just from a perspective of what could happen here. And even if you look at what where our budget line is now, we're at $41,000. Now, given there's some encumbrances there, we're gonna come in pretty lean this year. And then when you look at the years that were shared there, you can see they're pretty lean when you're talking about $40+ million budgets. That's more of what's typical once you're not in these weird years. So if we do something a little risky, like take a salary line and budget for less than the number of people that are actually in it by a factor of 250, you're taking a risk that we may go to the town at the end of the year asking for money, which is a bad position to be in. So I don't advise doing that, but, you know.
Okay, so
Can I just say, well, can you pull this up? Cause I'm reading what she has here from that queue here. And I think her and I are very confused on this. What is this? Number question 43.
Yeah.
Cause it reads here, I'm gonna just read it out loud, so we have it for the record. Total positions not filled include FRC and FS.
That would be the Family Resource Center, right?
And FRC.
Yeah, and
It
that,
says also, this reflects a point in time in the year. November, for instance, we could reflect the 1% of positions not filled, and by June could be 4%.
Okay.
And the question was, what percentage of positions typically are not filled over the past 5 years? So she read out all these percentages. So if you're saying that even 1% of the positions aren't filled, how many teachers do we have in the district?
200 and roughly nine.
So even 1% of that is still what, 3 people at what, $80,000, right? 70,000.
But you're not, but to your point though, those aren't people that are just not there. We have to put an LTS in there, a long-term sub. Or if you have to put somebody in there, you can't just not fill it when somebody makes a transition. So it's just a risk. And these percentages, if you look at it, that includes the FRC. So that's outside of your operating budget. It's also percentages as a snapshot in time. What it's saying is it can fluctuate from 1% to 4% and down. So I'm not saying there isn't fluctuation. I'm saying when you look at the dollars to dollars, the $250,000 figure coming out of that line would be risky. You can do it, but I'm gonna go on the record saying it's risky, because I don't wanna be in a situation where that comes back at me next year, if we end up, you know, in a situation where we had to go to the town for funding, because we, you know, I don't wanna be in that situation as a superintendent. It wouldn't be a smart way to manage it. So, for me, so, you know, it's just risky, especially if you look at where that, you know, if we're talking about 111, that didn't end 250 plus for the last 3 years, not at all. So it's, you know, but Ms. Visal makes a point in that there is end of year spending sometimes, some lines may run over, other lines don't. You could make a policy of not doing some, after a certain point, any other end of year, and you could roll and look to roll any, you know, addition over like the town does. Maybe you could end up with a, you know, percentage or a higher ERF, because you will need it in the coming years. This special ed stuff is out of control. And I'm afraid of what that fluctuation means for us, because it can be such a big one for such a small number. But these are all good points. It's just, I personally don't think it's worth the risk.
So I would just like to say the 250 was kind of like a throw it over the bow, not necessarily a hard and fast, but is there some fluctuation there where we would be able to cut a little bit so that we're not cutting actual people who are currently working? And part of it is the idea that we are working hard towards bringing in some tuition students that could offset maybe all of the 400,000. Or, and again, I know that's, you know, we don't know, but I'd rather, for me, kind of rather take something that really isn't filled right now than cut a person who's working now, and then they're gonna leave, and then maybe we get the money back, and oh gosh, now we have to rehire or whatever that looks like. So part of it was sort of, you know, kind of balancing we're hoping, and I don't know where we're at specifically with regard to maybe bringing in some money, and if the town will let us use that to offset our expenses, that certainly would be the hope. So that's where some of these ideas kind of came from, just to be fair.
I can understand. My risk tolerance would probably be a little lower than ours.
So lower, but
But
it's,
50, you know, like
okay.
my risk tolerance would be in the 50 zone, not the 250 zone.
Okay. But maybe 50 is one less of these teachers that's on the
granted,
list
yeah,
here,
I'm not
right? So
against
maybe
the-
that would be
But
a
I
thing.
worry about it at a figure that's
Okay.
higher than,
All right,
you know.
and if I look at these numbers, okay, so maybe we average that out and maybe it is 50, so maybe we keep somebody and
Yeah.
cut that a little bit. And again, hope that we're gonna be able to put it back in and all is good in the
Yeah,
end.
no, I understand.
So that was one thing. As far as the administrators, and again, I know that there's some thought that there's one group that's, you know, maybe thought of, but you're saying we're understaffed. And I guess a question that I have is, who are they doing evaluations of? Is it the students or is it the teachers? The teacher,
Yeah.
because we have less teachers now than we did back in the day, and we still have the same number of administrators.
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. I guess I answered that too quickly.
Alright.
So, a person like me, when I was principal, I would do, half the teachers at TMS plus the secretaries plus the paras, you know, you do all, non-certs and certs.
Mhm.
So most principals and APs are doing that group. They're doing all the non-certs and certs. So roughly for, you know, maybe 5 bargaining units of people. The ones that are the most complex are the teacher evals. They can be very, very complex. So, you know, we actually have less admin than we did back years ago. So there's been an adjustment for teachers from the standpoint of enrollment. We also have fewer admin than we had in the past if you adjust.
Which ones have been cut then?
So we went with a very different model than we used to have. So we have no curriculum director and we have no social studies supervisor. But those positions, what we did was we transitioned positions from coordinators to supervisors. Some because that was where the state wanted us to go with something like athletics. But also because you're getting more bang for your buck out of a supervisor than a coordinator, and you were paying them the same thing. So when we look back in the past, anything labeled a coordinator was getting paid as much as the people that we are giving you know, as much compensation as we're giving to supervisors, right now, but we have fewer of them. So, I think really in order to kind of see this, if you look at districts around us, they do have, you know, more than we do in this area. And then you can see them in either assistant superintendent jobs or director of curriculum jobs. Sometimes they call them coordinators. But what a coordinator is they give a high step teacher an additional stipend of 20 or 30 grand on top of their 90 or 100, and they're making the 130. So what they'll do is they'll keep some of their, you know, other numbers. They keep that off the state's list of admin, but they still have people paid in that 130 zone doing similar stuff. They're just doing, you know, doing it with a stipend versus doing it with an 092, which is the certification. So, you know, we don't have enough people to cover the areas. When I worked in Newington, for instance, which is a much bigger place, but you have people covering, for instance, we don't have any coordinator supervisor for, you know, unified arts or specials. And we don't have that for, you know, for the social studies. We don't have a director. I do all the title grants myself. That would normally be done by somebody else. Every one of us has divvied up additional duties, grants, and activities that other positions would be doing in other places. So I can't figure out, I mean, we really aren't going to be able to sustain this with fewer people. I don't know. A Perkins grant is something, you know, that's done by one of them. I can't take on another grant, but as it is, it's very hard to finish the grants that we already have. Barb Daily Burns is, you know, all up in the literacy stuff. You know, Mark Rudy's up in, you know, everything with Perkins and everything with the NGSS. Math programming, every single thing you've seen with respect to the scores going up on that is everything to do with Jen Webster's doing. I mean, these people, if we eliminate any of them, and, you know, again, an assistant principal, if we did anything like that, if somebody tried to share between buildings, way too much work, they won't be able to handle that. That is not a paradigm that works. Yeah, then you also lose point 2 of them because there's travel between buildings. You know, we're pretty efficient with respect to our admin right now. And I would not be able to sit here and recommend that. And
So just to ask a separate question, is it better for the students to lose teachers than it is for them to lose an admin?
if you lose an admin, you lose the grants, the admin does.
Well, what if we had a grant writer that if they could, you know, that's a question. I don't know if that's a thing. I know the town has a grant writer. And if they can get grants that cover their salary and then some, is that a thing that we've talked about? I don't know
Well,
that.
somebody has to pick up, no matter what position that we would say, somebody has to pick up. For instance, serving children is, an admin does that. They do that through their chairing of the IEPs, you know, the PPT meetings, who's gonna chair them. They serve children and families that way. They serve children and families through the discipline and SEL programming that they do. They are involved with kids as much as any teacher is. They are teachers. I mean, it's basically the same level of involvement, just a different job. We're the ones visiting the homes where people aren't coming. You know, we're the ones encountering certain attendance related or family related issues where, you know, you have to do the home visits or the special programming or the outreach or the, the execution of 200 some, you know, meetings, say, in any given school at any given time that are, you know, around students, whether it's the student staff, which is student assistance teams, or the PPTs. It's just not possible. I mean, I don't know who we would divvy this work up to. In whoever it was, they're done. You know, they're not gonna take this and just say, oh, no problem, I'll absorb all the work that so-and-so had. They're gonna ask for additional compensation to do that. That's not gonna be they're gonna say, well, I'm not taking it. They have unions themselves. So it's not gonna be, if you eliminated one of them, they're gonna say, oh, no problem, I'll take on everything that Walt did. They're gonna say, well, if you wanna cover the things Walt did, you're gonna have to compensate us somehow for that, because we don't do that job. So you're gonna pay anyway for some additional,
But that means that they had time for it, so that doesn't.
no, it doesn't.
You know what I mean? Cause, okay, I'll
means
take
it-
more pay and now I can do it, that,
Yeah.
that doesn't really make sense. I'm
Well,
just,
no, I think what it, well, like, what, and again, I think as you pointed out a good thing, Ms. Bison, that, I didn't say that well. They're willing, someone, and I'm not saying they would even be willing to do this, if they're gonna stay up to 2 a.m. doing someone else's job, they're not gonna do it.
so, the reason I was just asking is cause I kind of with Brian a little bit, like, I really would prefer, we've already cut some teachers in this first go round, so we're really kind of looking under the covers here a little bit to say, well, where can we cut something that's not gonna be another teacher, another, that type of a thing, so I respect what you're saying, we're just asking questions about some of these other things, and okay, I'm a little happy that, okay, maybe we can get 50 grand out of the salary line, and again, everything that I was thinking is like, is sort of temporary, because I'm really hoping we're gonna put all of our efforts into bringing in some students that are just gonna just really make a lot of things make more sense, and be able to keep all of this 400,000 anyway, and really at the end of the day, hopefully would not be a cut to us, but and I will.
I mean, we are really trying, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's, any of the cuts were sort of like provisional, don't want anybody to leave, wanna keep all the teachers, wanna keep everybody, and just like, we're gonna make this happen over the summer, and we're gonna bring it back, and Bob's your uncle, everything's good.
I hope that is the direction. Certainly, I do. And we work to try.
Yeah, I know, nothing is a guarantee at this point, I get that.
I mean, I guess I'd also point out, you made some of the decisions that you made because of some ratios of class size, right? But on an admin side, that does not exist the way it is anywhere else. We don't have that. So just keep that piece in mind.
And I just, before I move on, I just wanted, I like what Reedy and Brian are kind of poking at, that, the assumption is, and granted, it's assumption, that additional revenue can be identified. We're gonna continue trying to manage it. And so how do we make adjustments now that aren't irreversible if that money doesn't? How do we make sure? And I know it's not something that, it's not a new idea. I know your staff is, when you're here out trying to figure this out. But, we cut a teacher. If we reduce a teacher, we reduce an additional staff member. Then it's an act of Congress to hire a new one when that money comes back. If we accept an acceptable amount of risk and lean that way, then it's really just it's an accounting thing at that point if the money doesn't. So it's some ideas to try to kind of wrap our head around and figure out that, these are unparalleled times. How do we adjust kind of our decision-making paradigm? Jen, did you?
I know Jen had her hand up, I can go, but
I was
didn't have my hand
keep
up.
going around, but if you don't.
Yeah, so, sorry, it's a lot to take in. So first, I want to thank everybody for the conversation so far, the respectful conversation. I think we're all really on the same page, if not close to it, especially with what we just started the meeting with. I just love that we're handling this with a lot of grace, so thank you. Because I know I just want to go home and be with my children as much as possible, as I'm sure you all do too. I want to echo Brian. I want to thank him for his always honest remarks and just also say that I agree. I was really disappointed in how the town council meeting went. I can't believe that the first motion thrown out was going to get us to a 2.9% mill rate, fund everybody's budget, and keep the town fund balance at the high end of their policy. I think it was at like 14.5, and we have a 10 to 15% policy range on that. I can't believe that motion didn't pass with flying colors. And newsflash, breaking news, alert, alert. I don't want to fire any staff either. So, same page. So thank you all. I understand the conversation, that Dr. Willett and, Rini just had. And I like it. I agree. I would love to look at that line item. with respect to how much risk you feel is comfortable. So that's number one. I don't think we want to talk about the tuition thing too much, but I guess even if we were to gain tuition, do we have any kind of, or thought that we will be able to just take that money in for next year's budget?
We'd have to ask the council.
So that would be something we'd have to go through for the town, and as we saw already with what we wanted to do with the 650K, they wanted to lower us by what we gained, so, again, love it, would love to be able to do that, but my concern with the way that things have gone since I've been on this board is that nothing has seemed that easy, and it hasn't quite been tit for tat, in my personal opinion. So that just feels risky to me.
Wait, sorry, so if we get tuition money in, that goes to the town, not
The board doesn't make money, so money coming in would go to the town. The thought is that would then get passed back.
right.
But this would be a little bit different, I would just wanna say, from the 650, where we're just taking an expense and giving it to them and we're adding to our budget versus we're bringing in revenue. And we're wanting to add that to our expense. So I do think that there's in my mind, a much better argument, because we weren't bringing in any revenue to cover the 650. We were just saying, hey, you take that and we're gonna keep our budget the same. So I do think the revenue part of it is potentially, hopefully, a different
I
conversation.
certainly hope so, but we can talk about ECS grant, we can talk about a million things where it just hasn't seemed that way. But I would love to have that argument with you and team up on that. We've mentioned before, request possibly increasing the ERF to 2%. How and when would that happen, and how quickly could that help us?
You'd have the ordinance 86, chapter 8, it would have to be changed. It'd have to change they have right now in there 1%, chapter 8. They would have to change that to 2. The state allows 2.
They being the town council. So we would have to ask that. Can we ask that at any time?
Yeah, you can. I don't know what that, but you can definitely. And then if you wanted to create a policy or a practice of a certain end of year practice where you targeted a certain proportion percent of anything left and immediately did that and did nothing else with it, you might be able to build that, up a little higher than you're able to do it now. The reason it got, kind of got up there a bit was those anomalies, which is uncommon. You usually do not have that kind of money to roll over to ERF. So, it's usually more of a, a little bit here, a little bit there thing. And so you're still riding the wave of that little bit now, and that won't be the way it is in the future. So, there's a couple of factors there to think about, but the short answer is it would require council to change.
Could we do that in time to affect our end of year balance this year?
Well, you're not gonna have enough to roll over at the end of the year this year to make that helpful. It's a good mechanism to have, like the 10-year span, but you're not gonna have much to do that with this year, and I do think the next couple of years, that's why we're putting a lot of effort, and we always have, cost avoidance, looking for new ways, but I think we will expand certain programs, choice, there's also other possibilities we're pursuing to try to help, but nothing that happens with this, snap of the fingers or whatever, it doesn't turn on a dime, so to speak. So, I wouldn't bank on too much happening, right away. I think we have some things happening over the next couple of years that I think will continue to help, just like we had some things in the past few years for the folks.
So in the same kind of light, what would asking the town to take over some of the SRO/security look like? And we had 2 counselors advocating to add a position that was gonna cost the town $15,000 more, that everyone in our position was saying was not a necessity to keep the town any safer. So I would imagine that they would also look into things that would keep our schools safer.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, based on how each town and municipality wants to handle it. Vernon has its own police force. Ellington has a couple of troopers and a bunch of constables.
How do we ask the town to look at that?
The people who have the power to change any of that would be on the council side. The council can make decisions about municipal police versus increased state, resident trooper, presence versus, additional constable contract presence, all of that. And that would be something that's truly in their domain. Now, what can happen, and I've seen happen in other places, I mean, an example, in other places I've worked, the school system didn't pay for the police. The police were embedded in the school system. They were part of the municipal police force and embedded there. And then police went to events, and you weren't paying out of pocket for every single event. There's other ways to do this that don't put that burden on the, board side, but, that's all gonna have to happen outside of our purview. We have control over our SRO process here, in our MOUs ways. We have complete control over who we take in as a security officer. So some districts have hired, security officers that are armed. That would be a completely board side thing that could happen. But anytime we have to do anything with the police, that is a municipal function, requires MOUs, MOAs, or the council to do its own, the town to do its thing. And let us know how we can, the school usually is a benefactor of the municipality's actions.
And then just for your information, Jim, I've talked to Katie about setting up a meeting in the relatively near future, to talk about this, based on this conversation.
Okay.
Nothing's been scheduled yet, but I've talked about our desire to have a meeting.
Great, I'd like to be part of that.
Oh,
Curriculum director discussion, would that also impact our NEAS?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think your team of teachers and admin and, supervisors did a great job with the NEAS visiting committee. They're coming back in 2 years. Great, really great people that we have here and did a magnificent job. Yeah, I mean, they look at it, they will probably make a recommendation about curriculum, definitely. And say, beat that up, get more people doing that.
My concern just
Yes.
is we're thinning this out too much. And again, as I understand the point, and I would definitely 1 versus 2 people makes sense, right? However, last year I was very passionate about the discussion about losing curricular liaisons and team leads. Because I was on the PTO and I was president of that board, I worked extensively with them. We have a line item budget as well for the PTO. We worked with all of the grade leaders. They do a lot. You have special ed team leads, it's a lot. It's not ordering pens and pencils. It's nothing like that. I gave a list last year. I could give a list again. We're already you're talking about teachers, our team leads loading lesson plans online throughout the year, for the rest of the year, training the new teachers who come in, working with the long-term subs and training them. I mean, scheduling the special ed team leads, scheduling the paras, like it's extensive and all the little things, taking over the recess duties and the lunch duties and the bus duties and all the things our teachers do every day when people are gone, when they're out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're now not going to have that. And I didn't make an impassioned plea for that this year because we were really out of places to take from, right? And it was $200,000 without taking heads. So I didn't make that same impassioned argument this year. Now we're taking that away. We heard from all of our administrators and rounds that they are so overwhelmed. These people are asking for social workers and guidance counselors because they're stepping in on that work. And we're not adding for them. We're probably seeing some of that this week. I'm sorry, just thinking about that got me a little flustered. You talk about IEPs and 504s and that they have to be present in all of these meetings. I mean, I have IEP meetings, my meetings last for hours sometimes, and there's always an administrator present. So we're thinning this out. Our vice principals are only 9 months. They're not 12 months.
We have some 10-month ones.
Or 10 month, I'm sorry. And so that's my concern there that we're taking, and again, talking about a scientist, a mathematician, you know, what would you call Dr. Daley Burns, not a linguist, but master of English.
Master of all the.
But I mean, who has a doctorate? I mean, these are people who are bringing, 20, 30 years, I think, Barbara.
She also has multiple reading certificates.
Right, working with the state, got us head of dyslexia, anyway, so I just think that the impact of that and who would handle those things K through 12. I don't think we can let that load fall on administrators that are in each building or more on Dr. Willett at this point. I think we will suffer more loss there.
So let me ask you this, Jeff, that what you're saying makes absolute sense, and, I think in the perfect world, I wouldn't want to get rid of any of them either. But I guess where my question is, that's the absolute argument or discussion that we have months ago before, when we were putting the budget together. So fast forward to now where that number, 400K has to come from somewhere.
We gotta do something.
So if it's not the curriculum advisor, if it's not the people, the physical people that we have here, if it's not the programs, all of which I see value in, I think we're past the point where we're reducing low hanging fruit. We're at the point now where very tough conversations have to be said. If it's not them, then where does it come?
I don't know, I think I could ask each of you the same question when you propose not wanting to do certain things, so I don't know, I don't wanna, I'm looking at this list and I don't wanna do any of it. So quite honestly, I'm only here tonight because I would love to abstain and not even vote on any of this, but that's not why I was elected, right? So I have to. So I don't know the answer to that, but all I wanted to do was contribute to the conversation in a respectful way and give Ms. Basil wasn't here last year when I talked about the curriculum leads and team leads and curriculum liaisons. I just wanted to add that piece of it, and that's a concern. There are concerns that come with every single one of these. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. I think, what if we do go too low on that staff line? What are we gonna do? Who's gonna go to the town and ask them and tell them that we're below budget? And who's gonna make sure that that doesn't fall on the superintendent or the administrators that didn't ask us to do that? You know what I mean? Like, it's everything we're doing here. I don't think any of us can really have great answers to. Okay, I have a few more. I love you.
I want to see that.
Does the sixth grade cut, to teachers, is that the unteaming that we discussed?
It would be a different kind of teaming. It would follow the fifth grade team model.
So it's back to, we're reducing that by 2, we're increasing the class sizes from, I think, 19 to 25. We're asking a teacher who is maybe just teaching math now to also accept another specialty like science and do both, training that teacher who maybe never taught science before, let alone in the recent past. That's all comes with that we've received several emails from very concerned parents who are already saying that's a very difficult grade, and they did not want that to continue into the difficult years of middle school.
Yeah, it would be, what we would try to do with it is we would transfer the group down to TIS. They would be part of the K-6 teaching core, and that would be in their certification here. We would lose a couple of teachers. Again, nothing here, it's never desirable to accept. That would be, they would be on the model that the fifth grade uses roughly right now, and then it would require the things that you're saying.
Can you roughly of what you've, of what you've proposed, can you roughly monetize each?
Yeah.
Yes. Just like really quick, as far as that goes, it's like 70,000 in ERF, 60,000 programmed.
No, I meant each position.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
275,000 in those teacher positions, so 275 grand has to come up there. Hopefully, yeah, and hopefully that's 225 after, let's say we use 50 grand. But it's a good point, and that's what I want to talk about as well, so. Yeah. I don't think sixth grade teachers wise whatsoever. There's other areas, I think. See, we talk about, obviously, we need para educators, things like that, but right now, in the horrible, I guess, very, very tight budget that we have right now. It's $183,000 that's a surplus right now for paraprofessional salaries. We've talked about it, that historically we don't have the ability to fill these roles.
Okay, so I definitely want to talk about that, but can we monetize
Yeah,
those?
absolutely.
Well, the problem is with that is it's really not, again, I hope we can, I'm not doing a good job describing this. They are not unfilled. They actually do not exist as unfilled positions. There are people doing them, are running over the lines to cover it.
Talked about before we can
So
answer
it's
that.
not that those figures don't sit there, as people that they may not be paras doing it, but it's subs doing it, and it's causing an overrun of that line. So let's say we took those away.
Let's stick with the question.
Yeah.
But I'm answering that question. It will overrun that line. It'll be in the negative.
You're answering Dan's question, I'd like to finish here and we'll get over to what the plan is.
So, looking at it right now, you're looking at between two of them, it's somewhere in the 100,000 zone. Right, between the two sixth grade.
Total.
You have to find about 110 something, it gets a little complicated because you've got it's good, there's gonna be bumping
I know,
involved
I
here and all of that, so. Again, it's gonna be somewhere in the, one of them's at the high end. Somewhere in the 100 to 150,000, you have to find, we'd have to go figuring it out. Once we have.
And
everything
what's the monetary difference between we have a librarian, but we're going to have to bring in
You
library
have to
manager
credit
for
a
which-
$35,000. It'd have to be, you'd probably reduce around the, 75 zone. Bring in somebody for 35, differentials 40 something probably in that zone, again, rough numbers. But we have to really crunch everything. The reductions that I've suggested come exactly out to and I'm not suggesting them, again, it's just in a bad situation, this stuff is things we already talked about. So you're familiar with the dynamics around the positions. You could change and say, hey, I'd rather it be a world language. Then where we're at is it may impact the middle school program as we move people around to accommodate, then you could take a world language. But the 400,062 or 067 is a precise figure based on all of the things that would be in and outs for those positions when if we were to reduce them. If you wanted to do something other than sixth grade, you could do one world language and, you could look for something somewhere else. That would be another way of doing it. It would have a program impact. It wouldn't be the complete elimination of a program. We transfer people around.
This would now be 2 ELA teachers from the high school, so how many ELA positions would that leave at the high school?
I have to go look into it. But I know that the class sizes will not, they'll still be in a range of 21 or, as it is, maybe in mode of 21.
Is there a likelihood of cutting electives there, things like journalism, creative writing?
You'll tend to lose electives of some kind if you lose positions, because you lose people who have to redistribute what we have,
I'm trying to weight these things. I mean, this is like
Yeah, the answer is
Sophie's
yes.
choice. I mean,
No matter
I'm
what
trying
you
to-
do, there's a program impact there, yes. There would be less sections. If it's English, there'll be, less world language options. If it's world language, maybe there won't be a, level 4, or there won't be something offered at the middle school, or be offered in a different way.
What about the concern of, with the science teachers, only a certain amount of the science teachers have chemistry certifications at the high school?
We looked at that. I wouldn't put something up that we couldn't cover all the certs for.
That was a pretty large class when my son took it and struggled in it.
There will be highs and lows in there. You have the data in the FAQ about what the average median needs are. So, again, there isn't a cut that you could make that's not gonna have some impact on some program or thing that it does, right?
I've already.
The thing I wanna avoid is I wanna be very careful about, I hate saying things like this, but, we've gotta be careful not to strip away lines that look like they're full here when when there's up and down dynamics that could put you in an extremely tight spot in the future. And so, you're better off in some cases doing some kind of RIF than going after some line you perceive to be over, because I do not think that is how this is going to be going in the future. And I don't think those fluctuations are as big as some people, some may perceive them to be. I don't think that money's there the way some of you think it's there. So I think we have to be really careful about that, because the fluctuations they're very precarious for us. So, if you want to do something other than, say, a sixth grade, the next thing I'd recommend is world language. Right?
I guess
But I don't think we should say, instead of world language, let's go take 250,000 out of the salary. Not saying you are going to, but I would not recommend that. I would say if you're gonna do not do a sixth grade, then pick something else. Ask me for something else and we'll pivot to maybe world language, and we'll reorganize that.
I guess I understand your response based on Dan's and Reni's question. I'm just trying to figure out with our very limited knowledge of where these cuts should actually come from. So 2 LA teachers at the high school, 2 science teachers at the high school. If that's really where the experts, you and the administrators think is the best pull, then okay, but the questions that I'm asking are just based on that. I mean, I have one son in the high school and one about to enter into the high school, so as much as, yeah, I'm aligned with everybody when it comes to reading and music program at TIS and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm also looking at what I know right now from what my children are entering into. So I'm just trying to make sure that if we go ahead with some of these things, that I really understand what we're doing.
I really understand it. I'm doing my best to answer those things. I would say if you didn't want to do an ELA, or you didn't want to do a sixth grade, world language would be the next thing I would recommend. And I don't even like putting the word recommend behind it, because I'm not suggesting this is what I want us to do. It's just, you have a fiscal reality that the council has reduced you by 400,000 and we have to find it. But I want to be careful that I'm not putting you in a precarious position in doing so, and so I will recommend things I wish I wasn't saying. For instance, I wish I wasn't saying, hey, there's, maybe world language would be an option. But that would be better than taking from a line that might fluctuate on you and create issues, and it's kicking the can sometimes not to do something that you have to do in a situation like that. So,
If we take a world language, does that pull French out of the middle school?
we would have to reorganize the positions and look at it. It probably wouldn't mean a complete elimination of more than one.
Is it definitively removing the job from a person?
At this point, I'm not sure. I can't answer that 100%. I mean, I think what you're seeing is, there are people that are doing different things right now, applying to different places. There may be openings, but I'm mentioning, I wouldn't pull world language out of the air for no particular reason. There would be a reason that I would pull world language out of the air.
I just want to understand what the impacts are before I suggest that we make a switch like that.
It may be in the loss of one of the levels of French at the high school, maybe. Lots of options for section.
No, I honestly, we're on the same page here. The only point that I wanted to bring up when we're having conversations around actual teaching positions and individuals in seats here, it's just from discussions in FFC, we seem to just historically, we don't have the ability to fill roles in paraeducators because from what we've discussed, like, we don't have a draw. It's not a massive salary. So people from out of town aren't coming in for these roles. So we have a number that are unfilled. So I completely understand that it's unfortunate, but if there are unfilled paraprofessional salaries, and just in preparation for FFC tomorrow, I knew it was the $180,000 number that we're over. I get it that we're under budget. If we're over certified subs or something, 50 grand, I'd rather pay a sub a little bit more that we have a overage in the paraprofessional side. So like talking about eliminating science or eliminating something versus having to pay a certified sub a little bit more money, that in my mind makes a lot of sense. But I think we're only talking about like 275,000 coming from staff. we're able to reduce that salary line 50,000, that's 225 grand we have to make up, so. Yeah, I know, I'm not gonna say which, like, teacher in my mind deserves to be cut over another, it's not my area of expertise whatsoever, but. I would just personally try to rather see it from other line items, I know we can't pull money from a para, that seems over, but right now it seems like we have a lot of money in the fund line item for paraprofessionals who just aren't here. Yes, we're paying certified salaries a lot more right now, or certified subs, but I'd rather pay a sub versus firing a sixth grade teacher and readjusting the entire curriculum.
It makes sense what you're saying. It's just you're assuming that will be how it is next year.
Yeah.
And I don't think that will be the case because we cannot not comply with IEPs. So right now, we're band-aiding it with subs, and that line is over by tens of thousands as of March. So April, May, and June will put that much more than that figure. That's how we're band-aiding it right now. Not a great way of doing it. That means that in the future, we will have to hire the more expensive ABISs. That money is not there in the future. It's there now because we're still dealing with the ramifications of the last couple of years. That money is not there, I think, in the future because we cannot not comply, and those jobs that we'll comply with will cost more, not less. So that's the thing.
Yeah, I don't know where to pull the money from, so I wouldn't wanna vote on something either, to be honest, but, it just seems as though it's obviously something difficult, but. You're gonna know better where the lowest impact of the students is gonna be versus me, so, not gonna lie.
Well, they're all good questions that you're asking. I get it. It's a hard thing to do, to try to figure out what to do with this.
Just in response to Dave.
Yes, so I don't know if it is or not.
Because otherwise, I wouldn't-
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What your response is, is there any, you know, like we discussed with the staff line and maybe we can do 50K there, is there any amount, even $10,000 we could pull from the parent line?
I really wouldn't do that. I know if your risk tolerance for that salary line is 50, that would be the max I would say doing from the salary line. You know, the ABIS get paid significantly more, and we cannot not do this, and we gotta solve this problem. And as you noticed, maybe over the span of recovering from the last few years, that problem's been solved, because those numbers were going smaller and smaller. But we're left now with a pretty precarious situation that we can't allow to continue. It's gonna be those WFPAs that I bring to you. You're probably going to see a few more of those coming in the next, 6 months or one. They're the outside of the fiscal year process ads, and they're usually your ABISs or something like that.
Too many.
Sorry. Yeah. It's within fiscal year, position addition. But you're gonna see though, you already saw one or two of those, you're probably gonna see more of those, and where that's gonna probably be coming from is there. And as we're doing, we're overrunning that line already to cover those bases, it's just not an ideal way of doing that. But it makes sense that you're asking, all of your questions are great. I appreciate it.
Jay. Brian, was your question related to Dan's question, or was that answered?
No, I said something about insurance.
No problem. So I hope we can all agree on this, and if not, that's okay. A recurring theme tonight is I feel like the Board of Education is paying for the town's inability over the last decade or so, I won't say more than that, or less than that, to bring in extra revenue into town. And this is something that as a resident, I felt passionate about, speaking to the council about. Haven't done so, I take accountability on my end for that, but I just want to make it clear that as a board, this is my first time speaking tonight, so I'm speaking from beginning to now, where we are now, so bear with me here. I will not quit, breathe. It's very disturbing and frustrating as a former student of this town to see one of my former principals actually sit across from me and
see what took place just a decade ago, understand what's happening now. And the town, in my opinion, at least the council, based on the vote that took place, there's no urgency other than, we've got Santini coming in, we've got some sort of dispensary coming in, wonderful, awesome. It has now been a decade I'm sorry? So, there's now been a decade of stagnation, and we're starting to see that uptick, but I mean, we're paying for it right now. And so I hope that's a conversation that as a town, we start discussing. How do we bring in extra revenue that is not just increasing our taxes, increasing your taxes, all these things? How do we bring in extra revenue? So, and I know, leaving the hall, we talked about it very briefly about how do we bring more in? How do we bring more in? So, as a board, I hope we can take that up at some point. And what does that look like? And again, that's not our responsibility, but
We can advocate.
we've got to advocate for it, because again, we're paying for it now. And so, and not just we are, I mean, 2 ELA teachers are paying for it, literally. 2 science teachers are paying for it, literally. 2 6th grade. And so there are real people paying for the mistakes of public service. And so I just want to get that across first thing. All right, thank you. All right. Next. Jen actually just asked a couple of my questions, especially, and Dr. Willett, I am going to be a little bit of a pest here because it's important in helping me understand the answer here. When we eliminate 2 THS ELA teachers, I have to know how many ELA teachers are left in that building and how many students are projected to take a course that is taught by what is classified as an ELA teacher. I have to know that answer before I can say I'm confident in a class size of 23, 24, whatever it may be. And so I think that's a very fair question, whether we get the answer tonight or tomorrow or next week or next month, whatever it is. I can't push anything through without knowing what the results are there. And so I hope that makes sense to everybody tonight. And again, if you have the answers tonight, great. If not, again, if we can get those answers, if we eliminate these folks in the reduction in force, whatever the verbiage is here, if we eliminate these folks, what does it look like? What does it leave us? What does it leave class sizes, not just this year, but next year, the year after that, and down the road? So those questions, I feel like I need answers. Those types of questions, I feel like I need answers before I can confidently say, let's do this, let's do that. And that's just where I'm at right now. And I would agree on the point of the team leads and the administrators. Again, I started my little spiel here by saying, again, the guy sitting in front of us, Dr. Willett, he was a principal while I was a student. And so understanding now the fact that he's a superintendent and still doing some of the same responsibilities that I witnessed firsthand, I think that's a problem. And I think that's a real problem. And again, how much of that is the Board of Ed's fault and whatnot? Well, that's to go back 10 years and figure that out. But we've got an opportunity to figure this out. And so much for the 5-year plan that was mentioned, but we've got an opportunity to try to resolve this. And unfortunately, this is a decision of, we're deciding between 2 evils right now. Do we eliminate whatever it is, 11 people, 10 people, excuse me, or do we eliminate, as was mentioned, the administrators and whatnot. So I am not confident voting on any of it until I get the answers to one of the questions that you would ask, which I have the same question, which is, when we eliminate 2 ELA teachers, what is the data? How many teachers do we have left in the building? When we eliminate, 2 science teachers, how many teachers do we have left in the high school building? I gotta have those answers before I'm confident.
Well, you're also it's not really, it doesn't work exactly like that. So you have certifications of 712. So that it's not necessarily how many you have at the high school per se, it would be how many English people have certified 712 you have in the district. You could transfer around to different roles, that type of thing.
Sure.
I mean, I can get the size number, but you're gonna probably need to give me some idea of what you want us to be talking about tomorrow night. What I can guarantee you will happen is ELA will reduce in sections, class sizes will probably go up. I think I have a rough section list here on the FAQ. So figure out where that was for you, but your class sizes are not going to get massive at the high school. It's going to reduce sections in some offices. That's what's going to happen. You're larger class sizes would probably remain in mode, which is high frequency level of the 18 to 21, probably on the 21 side. Some classes will be 26, some will be, on the lower end. Your median will probably be somewhere in that 18 to 21 zone. It's not great, but it's not going to,
Can I just jump in? It's,
It's related.
yeah. Budget question 1, CP English 2, section 2 has 28 children in it. CP English 3, section 3 has 28 children in it.
And that's, to that point, sorry, Jen, if you're not done, you can cut me off. To that point, that's sort of why I'm asking, because again, we've got, I get it, we've got something to hand over by tomorrow or whatever it is. But we've got a responsibility here to make smart decisions and run responsible decisions. And so that to me, a class size of already, what is it, 20, I'm sorry, Jen,
28 in 2 classes.
28 in 2 classes. And again, maybe
It was it just explained the maximum class sizes of the high school. You have
That's-
2 English classes at 28, a geometry section at 28, a civics section at 28, a health PE section at 28. And at the middle school, you've got a Spanish section at 26, a math high of 25, social studies 24, social studies 28.
I mean, that is too high, and I hope we can recognize that. So, yeah, and Dr. Will, thank you for your answer. It's not as black and white as I was putting it. The reason I was putting it that way is, again, we've got all these different words being thrown out and acronyms and all of it. But again, I think the word Jen used earlier, or Dan or Tony, somebody mentioned the word impact. The impact on the school building, the quality of education, the NEASC accreditation, whatever it is. I need some sort of confirmation of what that looks like. And so, that's where I'm at right now. And again, I know I didn't say much there, other than I'm kind of disappointed where we are. The 28, 27, I mean, guys, that is too high. So, and not just for the kids either, for the staff. So, yeah, I could go on and on, but I will yield for now. I have a question about the guarantee of revenue being transferred to BOE. I can't recall the context of my whole question, so I'll save that right now. But I may have another one a little later regarding, the transfer of, the tuition. Bingo. Is there a guarantee that, right, and so that's another, element to all this that, oh man, I am uncomfortable. So,
Yeah, to that point, Jaden, like Dr. Will, I know we're talking about it tomorrow, but do we have an update prior to FFC on that situation as it currently stands? Cause that's a line item in the agenda tomorrow, but if we have an answer today, it helps the discussion. So,
yeah, there's,
it's possible.
we're talking about the visiting kids. So that is in process, but not resolved. It would probably not be resolved in time for the.
And just for clarification, and what James said, what I'm looking for tonight is not let's etch it in stone, start taking names off of mailboxes. What we owe the council, what we owe the town tomorrow is, this is the direction, these are the effects we think are gonna happen, this is what we're looking at. Recognizing that, over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, Dr. Will is really gonna sharpen the pencils. He's gonna figure out, based on this and our accepted risk levels, that this actually means this number of ELA teachers, which then bumps all your ELA classes. My expectation is that at some point, as he's going through there, he's gonna see a gotcha that we come back and we've got to adjust vector a little bit. So when we leave here today, I'm not looking for the final solution. What I am looking for is to be able to turn to Dr. Willett and say, okay, this is the direction the board thinks we need to go. Go do that. The second point, and just on the, we've got to plan for worst case and hope for the best. While I certainly believe in some of the tuition conversations that are coming on, I know as we've talked, I keep looking over at Dan and different things to make sure he's writing them down for FFC. We've got an immediate problem and we've got a long-term problem. I don't think that the tuition ideas, I don't think that the, bringing the income over from the council, none of those are solid enough where we can afford to bet on yet.
Right.
And make that change. What I'm hoping happens, and I think I've heard Greenie and somebody say, is that we're going to start down these roads. Things are going to show up. And Dr. Willett can then say, you know what, this money is here now. I don't have to reduce it. You know, we can make those adjustments as we go, and we kind of got to keep an eye on them. But we've got to assume that not an extra dollar is coming. This is how much we have.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Wait, one thing from what you said. The other flip side of concerns is that, great. More money's coming in, that also means more students.
Yeah.
Where are they coming? What grades are they coming? Can we service them with the cuts? So they're coming to the high school and we're taking, you know, it's just, it's, you know what to do.
Just to say, so if we can do that, that would then justify us being able to keep some of these positions,
Yeah.
because if you really look at the total of this, there are, you know, English classes that have, you're saying 28, there's English classes with 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 12 kids too. So just to be on the other side of it, I'm not saying that there aren't some that are very full, and I bet those are probably more the freshmen. And then as you start having more options in the higher grades, you know, maybe that's part of what it is, but
not.
they're,
Just so you know, because my son's a junior and he's in classes.
well,
of-
I'm just reading.
No,
off
I
of
know.
this, and Science
I know.
classes with.
I'm
8
just saying, I
kids.
think it's more of a result of the, honestly, the four block schedule.
One at a time.
Right, so point being that what having more students come in would justify keeping those positions, and you wouldn't have to add another teacher or another salary. We would get to kind of keep that, it makes it more robust, yay, you know, we can go forward with not cutting because we can, you know, kind of afford or pay for, or justify maybe better those classes. And keep more, you know, more options for the high school kids for sure.
I'm 100% in that. I just would want some kind of assertion from the town council that they were going to allow us to keep that.
You're 2 steps away from, I guess the problem here is that what we're talking about will have future benefits for you, but they really aren't something you can count on right now. And we have to let staff know by May 1st who we are reducing in force, unless there's other extenuating circumstances, et cetera, fail. But we have to let people know.
We have to plan.
So we do have to try to come out of tonight with some idea of where you want me to go with this, because I do have other process pieces you have to do.
Yes, right.
This is a new topic, just.
Let me finish everybody before we get to do.
Oh, all right.
Katie, did you have anything you wanted to speak on?
I'd just be curious, as we're talking about the idea of bringing in more students, what is the timeline on something like that? Is that even something feasibly that would be a Band-Aid or whatnot? I'm confused about that piece. It's not that I think it's a bad idea. I think it's absolutely something we should be doing and looking into. It seems like it would have to be so swift. And I wonder if we're in a position to really be that nimble.
What Dr. Willett mentioned just a little bit ago, you know, we are still a couple of steps away from being able to even say that, you know, to implement. None of those steps are going to be complete by May. None of those steps are going to be complete by tomorrow. And so while it's a possibility and would be great if it's a possibility for the fall, it's not something we can plan on for this initial decision process.
Okay, thank you. Understood. I'm just trying to process the information at this point, so that's it. Thank you.
Dana?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, sorry. As Katie said, I'm taking all this in. I think Jaden and Jen were right on track, and I truly appreciate what they said. And I'm with Brian, where I don't want to cut any educators, and any of us that went to any of the rounds, any of these last several cycles and went to the meet and greets or the budget rounds with our educators, talked about staff resources on an administrative aspect and talked about resources in the classroom. So I get really concerned when my teammates are asking questions about administrators versus educators. I get concerned when we're talking about increasing class sizes or impacting class sizes. As Katie said, I'm absorbing a lot of this right now. I'm not ready to make any decisions on all this context when we don't have all the information currently. I'm disappointed in the town council meeting that I attended or listened to, when we have people making decisions that really have no idea what's going on in the schools. Clearly by the conversations that they're having during these meetings. I get concerned when we're having town council members talking about the security or the levels of security we have in our building and not in an executive session in town council meetings, when those are inappropriate conversations to be had. We have people making decisions in the town that that's disturbing. We have ex-Board of Ed members on the town council who used to fight for class sizes and fight for students that are now clearly fighting for other things and following their plans. So I'm concerned on how to stop the bleeding, really. This has been something that's been a downward spiral for 11 years. I've witnessed, I've witnessed a lot of cutting the Board of Ed over and over and over again. And I witnessed a council member say last meeting, I'm not cutting the town side, we'll cut the board side. And that's pretty disturbing. And it's looking at Dr. Willett to be creative. Dr. Willett always finds the money is the rhetoric. He always figures it out. It's quite frustrating. I think that people need to take a good hard look in the mirror and see their impact on multiple levels of being on the town council or the Board of Ed, on what we've done to our town as a whole and what we've done to the Board of Ed as a whole. This is not the doing of our superintendent. This is doing of the guidance of our town council and our Board of Ed over the last 11 plus years. This is a tough pill to swallow. I think Jen Galchant and Jana and Brian, a lot of things you said, you're right on the right track. I know Dan wants to get creative in FFC and I'm appreciative of it. And it stinks that the 9 of us are in this position where we're having to, I don't know what I want to say, like, try to put the tourniquet on. But as Jaden said, it's a lot to absorb. And I think there's some stuff that we need to hear back from our town council. And I think there's some things that we need to hear back from our superintendent before we can make a decision that's going to impact our school system and our town as a whole. And I'm sorry that I don't have anything that's an answer, Tony, because I've been listening to this meeting all night trying to be as creative, and I appreciate, people being forward thinking and thinking outside the box. But I think the reality of it is we need to fund properly across the board. That's it.
We probably, if you can, want to come out with an idea tonight, because what will happen if we don't is anyone who is in the low end of things will be forced to think that it is them.
Yeah.
And you will see a mass exodus of people.
Yeah.
And at a time when there are many openings opening up. So it's not a good idea to let this, to not resolve this.
Right.
All right, I do have a question here. I don't know if I got the right chart right here. It's 235,000 for property liability insurance. I don't know if this line item works the same as my own homeowner's insurance and liability insurance. If there's a way that we can raise this deductible to offset, to create some savings. I don't know what the deductible is on the property and liability insurance. If it's 10,000, let's raise it to 25,000. Like, I don't know who knows much about this policy.
Well, this is the price of insurance for us. I mean, I can go seek that, but it won't be a fast thing, and you have to probably go out, You know, in terms
Well,
of
if we
your
have a
deductibles,
policy and we're renewing it, what
in
can we?
terms of your deductibles, I mean, we've chosen the deductibles we have, the threshold we have for a reason. You know, for instance, if we wanted to go to a higher deductible, I have to explore that. But then you will pay more when you have an issue, right? Because that's how that will work.
Oh, I understand that.
So there's a reason why they are where they are. That's something we
I'm trying to
explore.
find savings there, so.
Right, but we probably need to explore that in a year span of time, it's not going to be something we can probably execute in a short span of time. We have to go research it, ask what the impact would be, have meetings on it. I won't have, and then even if I, did have something on a run basis to see whether certain people would find that to be acceptable or not. If we're talking about property insurance,
Do we know, like, mine renews yearly? Is this on a yearly basis, I would assume as well?
probably I'd have to check. Yeah.
Can we put that, Dan, explore that? I think there's some savings definitely we have. I know many people, I know the insurance price have gone way up and you raise your deductible, and if you have a crisis, you have a crisis, and you figure it out when it happens.
Well, then I guess I would advise against figuring it out as it happens, because that,
No, I'm saying, like, if all of a sudden we have a 25,000, goes up to 50,000, we have a big claim, we find the other 25 somewhere in an emergency crisis. That's what my statement is meaning.
no, I know, I can respect the desire to do that, I'd be really nervous about that. It protects us.
All right. We have to find, I'd be nervous about cutting teachers, so let's explore that, please.
So let me just add, the reason you may have trouble with that is if we aren't sufficiently insured, you'll cut teachers in the middle of a year to achieve, balancing a budget. Because you can have damage that's in the hundreds of thousands on things. So like if pipes, when I was at the high school at one point, these geothermal pipes fell down and blew up or whatever, we don't have other places to go to for this. We would have to either pull it out of your operating budget or ask the town for it, or you'd have to reduce somebody to, something to get there. So we can explore it, but I just don't, I think I would be careful about thinking it's going to save you something right now. We would have to spend time looking at that, carefully looking at that. So I hate doing that because I don't want to seem like I'm being contrarian, but tonight you need to focus, I mean.
I am. I'm very frustrated because I've said to we've mentioned 20 different things to cut, and I feel like everything is no, 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 no. These are the rock solid things. And I'm not okay with that at all. So I'm mentioning, I guarantee you, if we have a fire at a school or a huge pipe burst, we have $500,000 worth of issues. We have raised our deductible, we need 70,000. I sure damn well hope that the town council would pull the 70,000 out of their fund to shore up the schools so our kids who live in this town from the taxpayers would get the kids back into school. That's what I'm saying. This is a purposely good line item to raise the deductible. If it saves us 5,000 or 50,000 out of 235,000, I think it needs to be explored ASAP. That's all I'm trying to say. We're trying to find $400,000. Next line item.
What figure is that you're talking
This is on line item
about? Like, what's the figure?
520 on this 5-year projection. At the top, it says 2024, 2025 BOE proposed.
So the amount you're talking about though here,
It's like 240.
$234,620.
240, so that's, all right, that's. Okay,
Yeah.
it's liability insurance, yeah,
2000.
234,620, it's, I got the line, I'll look into it.
Thank you. And the other thing I have, so we were moving one for this computer thing. I don't want to cut any teachers, so I'm throwing, you want ideas? What I want to present to the council, this is my idea. We have 100,000 going from this ERF fund. We fund another 100,000 from the budget. That'll cover 200,000 of the 409,000. We cut the other 200,000 for next year. I know it's not ideal, but it saves teachers, and it saves people's jobs, and keeps kids learning with the people that they know. So.
What was that
Fine,
one?
yeah, the other 50,000 for the teacher line item, that's 250. Let's find 150 somewhere. I know, Dan, you had some ideas and something you mentioned earlier. Apologize if I forgot.
What was that again? I apologize. I'm just trying to get the other one. So,
Yeah, I'm a little lost.
I think I got it. Wait.
So there was 400,000.
Yeah, so.
We voted, we use 100,000 to fund that line item. We only need 300,000. So we use another, this is for the computer, technology upgrade for the Windows thing that doesn't expire for 15 months from now. My proposal is that we only fund half, we take the 100,000, that's already, we already have the cash, we use that. We take another 100,000 for the budget. So we have 200,000 savings, so only fund half of that this year.
which line?
This is line item 730, equipment, instruction, new.
So 730.
Yeah, this is the one where I talked about that the guy said it wasn't ideal, but we still have coverage on the 2010 until next October, I believe it was. But he was worried about possibly the ordering of
laptops and,
laptops and whatever else they needed.
to support, because the teachers were going to be using theirs to connect to the board
Yeah,
instead of their
Yeah.
desktops.
yeah.
Right, okay, so I'm just
So
trying to
that's
find.
200 plus
trying
the
to find that
50,000 we
specific line.
mentioned, that's
No,
250.
fine,
It's just the one for the Windows upgrade.
okay, let me try to find it, because it's important that I know exactly if there's things.
So this part, are you talking about diverting some of what we had already said we would use ERF for? Or no?
No,
No, I think
All right, so
we
line,
already voted to fund 100,000 from the ERF, so that money is already there. I'm just saying, instead of us funding the other 309,000 in this budget year, let's just fund 100,000 more. That'll get us 209,000 of the 409,000.
so then the extra,
So we'd have
The
to
extra
come up with
money would be
2,000 next year. Unless there's extra in this ERF possible savings, then we can fund more.
what do you have that line item?
I have a series of, the Windows upgrades. If you want me to try to reduce all of the Windows upgrades, is that kind of what we're talking about? There's 11.
No, so the fund half,
500.
fund half now and half next year.
See, I'd have to work on figuring out what figure that actually was in its totality.
Because part of it was also
That was,
upgrade, I guess, the Board of Ed had set previous years of a renewal schedule for laptops.
well, that's your educational technology initiative. That's what you're doing 3, 6, and 9.
What
So-
Brian is referencing is when we spoke to that individual, he said that as part of the Windows upgrade, that currently the computers, the desktops and the laptops that the teachers use to actually project up onto their boards, those were going to end up getting phased out, and the ones that they actually,
Yeah, the
Take over.
laptops they have in their hands,
Are
they'll
gonna
plug
get-
into
they're
the,
gonna get plugged in, yeah.
Right.
So they were doing that transition
but
was going to happen.
and he's relying on that Windows 11 upgrade piece to do
Take
that.
care of it. Yes,
And you have aging desktops that are going out out of functionality. And even though it's 15 months from today, 15 months puts you flat into next year, not having that most recent version of Windows can leave you open to vulnerabilities that you're not currently going to be open to now. And the amount of money we're talking about, and looking at it, is 11,595, and maybe 30,000, something like that, to not do that upgrade.
No, it's 400,000.
I don't see
Straight up.
that, but that I do not understand that figure. That $400,000 figure doesn't make sense to me unless,
Well, this is the one you proposed to us.
that must include all of the, Chromebook and all that stuff.
No, I spoke to him. Tony was sitting right there. He told us it was $400,000.
That would include probably all of the equipment we're talking about. That's 210.
Yeah, all of the equipment for the whole thing, for all of the.
So that's all the Chromebooks, the laptops 3, 6, and 9. Sounds like that's what that is, because that's about 210 of that.
Yeah, he broke it down for me when I was in the room, but I
So
don't.
you're really talking more about this entire line of IT stuff.
Yes,
And,
to slash it in half. That's what I'm proposing.
so they're just, if you read through all the stuff that has to do with these lines, that would put us in a great deal of vulnerability from a network point of view.
But he said it wasn't until the following
That is a small
October, not,
portion of that.
not this October, but the following October.
The 400 you're talking about is all this equipment too. That 11 upgrade piece from a software point of view, which is not 400, is much less than that. That software is just part of the overall picture. If we're cutting this line and doing heavy reductions, it's going to impact that educational technology initiative. You have kids that have Chromebooks in 3, 6, and 9, and all that. That 400 grand doesn't cover only the Windows upgrade.
Do all three of those grades
That's-
need to have fully
They
new
usually
stuff?
cycle them through, and then every 3 years they sell back the additional.
What would be the downside of if they had to go an extra year and do 4 years?
Well,
For one or two of the grades, perhaps even.
it's just the damage that the kids do to these devices through the span of the 3 years, there's enough that's a recommended. That was part of the plan way back when they recommended a replacement cycle.
Right.
If we stop on that, it would probably affect the effectiveness of the use of these in the classroom, and now they rely on them almost exclusively for so many things. So it's different than.
Let me direct a question just to kind of tie this up with what you're talking about in my head. I recognize what you're saying. If we interrupt the plan cycle for the technology refresh, that there are impacts. I guess when you were looking at what we'll call your recommendation, I know the word isn't great, but these reduction of staff. Why did you feel that impact would be, or why do you feel that impact would be less than if we cut the technology? Am I making sense here? It sounds like you're
It's
saying
just this,
doing
the
technology
board,
creates issues.
the board made a commitment a few years ago to enter this initiative, meaning that they were gonna support these Chromebooks, for instance. So the district is relying upon them now and the lab. So that's like saying if we removed, I'm trying to find an analogy, they rely on these now. The kids get them and use them every day. They're in the classrooms like the books. So if we start knocking off that, then we'd have to figure out what that looks like without kids having these devices. That's ultimately what will happen because they break, they fail, they get damaged, and as kids will damage anything. That replacement cycle was something committed to by a prior board under the idea that this would be an ongoing type of thing. So it would be a major paradigm shift in how this is done. And that's not necessarily going to help you then next year if you have to re-up it. It's a kicking a can scenario again. So, I'm trying to find the right analogy. It would be like saying we're going to remove all this. You have things now that rely on this. You have the implementer bill that said that you have to offer hybrid meetings. There's lots of things. We rely on those machines exclusively for SBAC testing. They have to function perfectly for those tests. They have to be updated regularly. They have to function for every one of those kids. They take them on their devices and they take many assessments on their devices. The NGSS, the SBAC,
Surely
NAWA.
100% of them in all three of those grades don't have to be. I mean, we rely on the teachers too, just to be fair. We, as a board, I'm certain said we were going to keep the teachers too. So could we look at it and say, okay, there's 3 grades that we were going to do. We're going to assume that 30% in each one are so bad that they need to be replaced as opposed to 100% in each of the grades. Maybe I'm just asking
They
a
just-
question
they don't make it
to
to
try to
3 years.
support
That's-
sort of what you're saying.
It's that their lifespan, especially the Chromebooks, is shorter. And so after 3 or 4 years of a 3rd grader banging on it or a 6th grader banging on it, what's left isn't much to recycle to the incoming 6th or 3rd grader. They're not.
So they don't take them with them?
No, they're not in good condition. when they get to that point, which is why we trade them in at that lowest part of their, functionality, which, your average third grader, when they get to sixth grade and this gets cycled back, that device is not working very well. So if it's being relied upon for instruction, which it is now, it's relied upon for instruction as much as any other thing you might see, in a school, and it's not functioning, those teachers will not be able to execute lessons. It'll become a real problem. And that's because this commitment was made many years ago to do this. Now, we don't have classroom desktops and things like that. The way that, like, the high school doesn't have all the desktop machines they used to have. So all of it is relying on the kids' laptops. Everything they do is on the laptops. And now everything will be on that. Even the teachers' ones, they're stripping away all the desktops, and that's part of what this is. The other thing is, if you're not getting updates, we are protected pretty well right now from malware and all the stuff you see in the news about other districts, that are going through. And we do get attacked quite a bit. The only reason we're able to resist them or impervious to them is because we have the latest updates. We do have, a lot of protection. So we don't have a lot of malware or any issues like that are successful in infiltrating or wrecking things. But it does take down the effectiveness of this school district when we don't have the appropriate updates and the appropriate software and the updated windows and all of that. It's really important. So it looks like you can hit there, but if you hit there, it will have significant effects.
Right, I'll let you finish that, Jake.
I still think, I like a better breakdown of that line item, because that's not the conversation I necessarily recall from the IT director, and I don't know if you agree with me, Tony, or not, that conversation was, I thought it was for this, computer upgrade for the teachers and all that kind of stuff, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it wasn't until this computer thing, you're talking about the malware, still 15 months away. We might find some money, or we might get incoming students next January for all we know, for half the year, I don't know, we don't know. I was saying, maybe there's some grace to where we end up finding a line item that we don't use it as much, or is like saying that the teachers, maybe this percentages, we get more, so. I just have a hard time just not saying no on that and going after the teachers. I'm not voting for anything for the teachers. I'm just playing that right in the line now. I'm not voting for anything with the teachers.
So I would need to understand where that 400 that you're thinking is coming from.
Well, if you can email the director tomorrow and then shoot us an email in the afternoon, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah,
He had it pretty quick. He seems to have it on top of his head, what the numbers were when I.
I'm looking at the lines themselves, and I don't see one for 400 for that. So I'll look at it, and I think what you're saying is, can we save something by doing the Windows upgrade later? That seems to be.
Right, it's hard,
So
raise.
that I can look at and get a figure for.
Let me get to Jim.
I think my concern with that is, I just got done talking about the last 10 years of pushing the can down the road. We've had very good conversations about, let's stop putting the can down the road, let's address this, and which is why I mentioned the revenue discussion. When it comes to the insurance, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding it, but how I'm understanding it, if something were to happen, we're gonna have a higher deductible and hope and pray that the town council is willing to make up for the difference. I'm not understanding that portion of it. If I'm understanding it, that we're hoping that the council would make up for, again, that difference of where we are now to where we're looking to raise it. Again, we're putting our hope in the council with no guarantees. And so that goes back to my point about the guarantees with the tuition collection, which is that definitely coming to us. So with that recommendation, I don't want to cut any teachers, any staff, any admin, any books, any pens. I don't want to do any of it. But in this situation, we've got known impacts, and then we've got the unknown. And I can't, again, I'm just not comfortable working in the unknown, which is, would the council do this? Would the council be willing to do that? And so I hope that makes sense as to where I am right now in terms of the insurance conversation, unless I'm just not understanding. In that case, I would, appreciate it. A loop around and simplified version, because my brain is just not getting there. It's not getting there with the deductible portion of that discussion. And then the computers, the computers, maybe Dr. Willett, but I think you know, the difference between a Chromebook and, you know, the computer I have right now. I mean, this is a $1,000 computer that will last me as long as I work where I'm at. I mean, that could be 5, 10, 15, 20. This is a computer that will last me. Whereas Chromebooks, the average Chromebook, I don't know if anybody knows what the price of a Chromebook is nowadays, but I'm assuming it's a fraction of a quality computer. But that's why Chromebooks are great options for school districts to purchase, I'm assuming. And so, their lifespan is just not that of anything remotely close to what any of us have on our desks right now. And so, again, just, I don't know if I'm comfortable pushing it down the road again, because we relied on them so much when we did our rounds. What was it, TIS, where we saw one of the kids look at his book, open his computer, type in the question, blah, 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 got the answer, checked his book, made sure that was correct, fact check, they got their answer. And so, like, these computers definitely, and again, we're just looking at, you know, different solutions and different paths here. But, again, I'm just not comfortable with that route as of right now. As of right now, I am on the, let's see what the, where to go here? Let's see what, the horrible, awful, didn't want, staff reductions looks like, where that leaves us and go from there. That is the additional staff reductions and where that leaves us. And then go from there. And then once I know that, once I have that idea, once Dr. Willett can provide it to whoever, town council, town manager, whoever, then I think, Brian, your conversation, we sort of have to, are sort of forced to revisit and just say, look, these are now our options. So, sorry to speak in.
So I'm looking at some of this, just, and I apologize because there's a little lag, but you know, as I, the Windows 10 stuff, you're gonna have to pay to extend support on Windows 10 anyway. So we can't be without support. So even if we don't go to Windows 11, there's gonna be a price for paying for the Windows 10 support to get whatever, you know, upgrades. And the desktops won't run like we want. Right, so it's a mess not to try to do that, but, I'm researching it as we're talking, and I wanna leave you with what I can tonight. You were saying, I'm sorry. You had a question about.
He wants to know the impacts of the loss of teachers.
Right, sorry. Yeah,
Lots of teachers,
it's not a question, more so as here's where Jaden's putting things for now is, I wanna see, you know, I wanna give you the opportunity to work the additional reductions into our, budget, even though, again, started this discussion back in January, December, saying, I want 0 people being cut from our schools. I wanna see what that looks like, and then that provides you a chance to provide it to the town, or whatever process has to be followed that you had mentioned before, which I wanna respect that process. And so, once that is done, once we see, okay, now we've got 2 ELA teachers we have to take from the high school, here's what that looks like in terms of a structure, what classes are available with the 5, 6 remaining, you know, whatever that is. Only at that point do I think I can consider starting to go down the deductible raising and moving this around, conversation. Cause I just wanna know what it is. I just need to.
Like another deductible thing, we have to talk to a company called USI. There'll be a process of figuring it out. It's not going to be
Quick, right, but that's why.
I mean, we can look at it for the next cycle.
Go ahead, Jen. She's got a question on what game.
No, I just wanted to clarify 3 things. 1, 3 through 8 uses Chromebooks, 9 through 12
Right, this
uses
is
laptops.
laptops.
2, what I think you're missing, from what Brian is saying is, Brian is being reasonable and making a reasonable request that if there was a disaster, the town should come in and help us with that disaster.
Yeah, I completely
You
agree.
have been doing this now for 3 years and you feel a little bit burned. That reasonable requests don't seem to be so reasonable. So that's where I think that is. And I have one more.
This is why I don't talk a lot.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Reading.
All right, one quick question and then a math problem. So of the $238,000 or $234,000 in insurance, does that actually include us paying a deductible for a thing, or does it not? Is that just the insurance? And then if there was a situation, we'd have to pay the deductible on top of that? Just to be
I
clear.
know there's a deductible, and we pay.
I understand that, but
And
you're
then-
saying that if we lowered that, then we wouldn't have the money to pay the deductible. So that,
I'm saying if you if you say, right, that you're gonna pay less for the insurance policy itself, so that you increase your own liability when
Correct.
something happens. You have to really, not you, but generally then you'd wanna budget for that
so that's what
liability.
I'm asking you. So
Yeah.
in the $234,000, is that just the premium, or does that include some amount of money if we had to pay a deductible? That's the question.
I mean, I think, and I'll look into it, is that's what we pay for the plan. I mean, we're not.
So then if there was an
You're
issue,
paying a
we would
deductible
still have to
anyway.
come up with the
Yeah.
deductible regardless.
Yes,
Okay.
and as I'm looking at it, we also are in with the town on these contracts. We're not just us.
Okay.
So we would have to go to the town and the town will have to. agree
So no
with
matter
us.
what would happen, if we paid the $234,000, there was an issue, we would still always have to, we could have 4 issues and have to come up with $100,000 if it was 25 grand a piece, just to
You
be.
could, but then
And
if
we
you're.
don't have
if you
that
are
money in the
paying
budget no
less
matter.
For your program, you'll pay more
Right,
when
so I'm
those
just-
5 things happen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The point is, there is no money for deductible, no matter whatever might happen. So.
Right,
just-
and we do these with the town, so we would have to work with the town with USI. It's not
Right,
quick.
so if everybody was good with, okay, we're gonna raise the deductible for everything, no one's putting the deductible in their back pocket, no matter whatever it is, so, okay, so that was just one clarification. So where I'm at is on your second group of things with the oil and the, all of that stuff. You have $70,000 come out of ERF, I'm coming up with $128,879. I would argue, let's just, we need some money, let's take the 100 out of the ERF. So now, and then if we add the salary line, if we're willing to go 50 on the salary, we've got a cut of 209, let's call it. Which leaves us needing to cover $191,000. That's, I'm like, we gotta get somewhere here, so.
Yes.
Are we in agreement potentially on that? Like, okay, let's do his cuts that are in the bottom area, because that's kind of not a thing. And change the ERF. Brian had suggested doing 100. Walt has suggested 70. Are we maybe okay with doing the 100? And are we maybe okay with doing the 50?
So the way I'm processing this is I would take what you just said, and I'm tracking.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I'd create what I call a salary line variance reduction of 50.
50,
I would
if
create,
everybody else is good with the 50.
right,
But,
and I
okay,
would call ERF, additional use, I would make 30 because it's beyond the 70 and you have.
70 and
use
right,
30
yeah,
more,
right.
right? So, that would mean that you've now got 130, well, and I put in something world language, so you have 80,000 salary lines, the salary variance and ERF, that's 80,000, right? 50 and 30.
I didn't have.
50 we didn't do before.
Yeah.
And 30 that we're doing in addition to what I suggested. So that's an $80,000 offset, for instance.
Okay,
And I'm just adding up your offset and then I would work it against the figures that I have. But if you're thinking of offsets, I'm trying to collect your offsets.
but that's what I'm trying to come up with, okay, how much more do we need to get to that currently is those teachers that no one seems too crazy about cutting but we're probably gonna have to at least temporarily say, we're gonna do that. Or my other question was, and this is probably not gonna be so easy, is there a way of taking some percentage off every line item? Like, okay, just go down the line and every single one, we're gonna take off 5% and we're gonna figure it out, whether it's, books, it's this, it's that, whatever it's gonna be, is it the, posted, everything gets a, some percentage and try to see, well, what could that look like? And that is a taller order. I get that, and I know you need an answer now.
Yeah,
So-
and I think I can understand the desire to do something like that. I just think, that, it makes sense from a, hey, let's find a common ground type of thing. So that might be easy for people to say, hey, let's just do that.
No, I
But
know
it's
it's not
kind of
necessary.
spitballing, you know, rather than going after a certainty.
So can we say then if we're $191,000 short, we're gonna take $191,000 out of positions and maybe not specific positions, but we're gonna have to cut them somehow?
Probably.
You've got to be able to notify individuals.
Well, that's what
And that
makes me
means that
nervous,
everyone
is
at the low end
notifying
would
and
have-
then. What? Okay,
So the way I'm understanding, correct me if I'm mistaken, so the ask right now was proceeding forward with the recommendation, with the exception of making the adjustment to the salary line item by 50K, the ERF line item by 30K, investigating opportunities in the ITE.
The new,
Right.
equipment.
And investigating there. But if opportunities were identified there, then that would go into the pot. But right now, we've got, I'll repeat again, stick with what we have with the recommendations, 30K, 50K, look for opportunities.
And those opportunities, those opportunities potentially, excuse me, open up the idea of saving some of these positions in the end.
If opportunities are identified,
that's
we've
the
got to
goal, we're trying to get
Well, I
rid of
mean, I
that.
get rid of that. If something comes up, I can back into it, so.
Brian.
I just wanna say, well, I don't, your statement, I just wanna clarify, your statement, you're saying, are you including the cuts to all these personnel?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not.
Well, it wouldn't be all of it, cause you've got 50,000 more in salaries and you've got another 30 here, so there's at least 80.
Well, then why don't we
To give
say
you
that?
an picture,
Maybe
that-
80 out in that, because we don't have any numbers next to these people.
Okay, so, go ahead.
that 80 will give you one person. Right, I mean, that's how you have to kind of look at that, because it's a complicated in and out insurance, they don't pay into that anymore, so we, you know, with the cuts that were there, that's $10,000 more we have to pay because they're not paying into insurance. The number is, you know, it's not like one particular number for one particular
So
person.
let's get this to an ask. So with what we're saying here,
Well, can I just do one last thing? 80 times 5 positions, that's $400,000. So that math is not working for me. He's got 5 positions up here
Oh, and then
that he's saying, and you just said it's 80, so that's the 400,000 all by itself.
Well, basically, I'm taking a number that is between, the highest figure is 95,000 that's on this list,
Right.
and the lowest figure is like, you know, 50. So you can use 60 if you want, but I don't wanna, what I don't wanna do is say, this is gonna mean that we're saving. At the end of the night, let's say you're saving 3 positions, but I haven't done that carefully and I can only save 2 with it, that's not actually true. So, you know, I have to be careful about what we're doing with that because, you know, I mean, we don't
So
wanna
if we
do.
call it
we
an
don't wanna
average of
assume it.
60, that's 300,000. We're only needing 200, so I feel pretty comfortable that we can save at least 2 of those. Or would you say that would be accurate?
2 positions for 80,000?
2 of your 5.
For what?
so what if we said,
You can't say 2 positions with 80,000.
I didn't say 80. You said if we called each position 60,000 times those 5, that's $300,000. We're looking right now, after your other list, for 200,000. According to my math.
Well, you've allocated 80,000, right?
Yes.
I'm more
Okay,
than one.
well, all right, well, we don't have to keep going.
so if we say that based on the 80K,
We've saved at
we-
least 1 position,
we reduce the reductions, we eliminate one of the reduction, or
at least 1.
we eliminate however many reductions that 80K applies. Okay,
Okay,
so
with movement and,
with continue, but
Well, and you're doing that again, to use your own logic with you. You're doing that with ERF, which is a non-recurring, you know, so that position stays in, you're gonna have to pay for that position next year. without these things.
Well, we know what it is, but at least we have.
Okay.
But we also have the contract set, so if we get any raise next year, we should be good with contracts, right? Which is the bulk majority of this budget.
You're kind of using a methodology you've somewhat avoided in the past, which is using certain things to offset personnel costs. You're using, for instance, the educational reserve fund to offset personnel costs, which is something you haven't generally wanted to do in the past.
But what I think, at least from my perspective, what we're doing here is we're betting on the budget, and I keep.
That's you.
No, we're betting on increased.
No, I completely disagree.
Hold on, please. Let me finish. We're betting on getting some of that revenue in on those long-term plans by being willing to take this step. Go ahead.
The only reason why I disagree is we just got all of these, all of the vast majority of our budget, whatever it is, 80–90% of our contractual items set in stone for the next however long you guys did the last board event, it wasn't here. Set. So these line items, you know, with some of these raises, we should be able to, I would hope that we would be able to, as the 5-year plan, whether, you know, it's in the dumps or we're still moving forward with it, that we're at least covering these increases through the taxes. So I don't know that next year we say, oh, we're gonna lose that teacher. I don't think that's the necessary statement to say, that we should be getting increases as long as these contract items are at these minimal, or at these set prices that we know moving into the future, at least the next couple of years.
And if I came across saying next year we eliminated, then I misspoke. What I was saying is, by using some of this money to pay for what normally would be a reoccurring cost, we're saying, okay, we're putting a plug in now under the belief that we're gonna get some. That we're gonna get some of these, you know, these increased revenues, these types of things. I don't wanna eliminate anybody. But, so let me go back to the ask. Are we good, or do we have a motion to? Did you wanna speak before I keep?
Well, yeah, I just I'm looking and trying to do things as you're talking about, right? So like I'm looking at equipment before you make your motion, you know, I'm trying to get the number as high as I can. You know, doing things like Mr. Thompson had mentioned, and using what Ms. Repeats had mentioned. So, you know, the 50 from salary, 30 from ERF, although we need to be careful of that. Then Windows 11 stuff. Windows 11 stuff, if you consider monitors and the things that he was talking about doing, if you want to not do that, which would mean you absolutely have to do that next year in that cycle, because you have to upgrade that stuff, and the desktops don't work with this, and it's like, I think you can get 92.5 out of that maximum if you're pushing it right to the red line, which will cause issues, but it's not people. You add the 50, you add the 30, there's 172.5. But what I would like you to try to do here is, I can tell you, for instance, you know, one of the ELA teachers, 56,188, right? And that's just looking at everything. The library situation, you know, 62,235.77. So if you take that 172 and tell me who you want to put back from who I have put out there to you, that would be a great way to end the evening, because we know who's in, who's out, and it's not ambiguous. Because if it's ambiguous, that works against us. People will leave this thinking it's them.
Okay,
So are we down to cutting just 2 of these 5?
So what
Is that
I'm
you're saying?
taking what you did
Yeah.
and some of the equipment, right,
Mhm.
really stripping that equipment,
Right,
you're at 172.5. So what I would do is I would take, you know, the 56, so, you know, name a teacher, and I can give you the most specific thing in there that I can with what I have here. But it's not as easy as 80 is this or whatever. It's more complicated than that. So you'd have to say, we want to bring back the 6th grade and X. We want to swap out the ELA and make it world language. We want to, that would be the kind of thing to do there.
Jen?
I'm trying to think to start with the statement or the question. So we don't have the answer yet. If we swap something and do a world language, does it definitely take a person? Do we know that at least? Will it eliminate a person in world language? Because what I'm starting to think about, what I would like to suggest is keeping the 6th grade, keeping the ELA teacher, possibly swapping the science for a world language if it's not a person.
The problem is you're asking me a question that I can't give you a certain answer for. I can,
know how to choose.
but that's the thing for anyone. What I can tell you is that probably, in the process right now, there are people that are out there looking for stuff. Whether that's actually happened or not, I don't know for sure. I would say in that case, I wouldn't be putting world language up, for no reason.
Could we
So,
keep the 6th grade, keep the ELA teacher, which by the way, still means we're going down by 1, based on our original proposal. And then could you take a look at what would actually eliminate a person when it came to science, world language?
we've
cetera.
done that. That's in the suggestions.
Then I don't understand.
You're asking specifically about.
I wanna save, I wanna keep the 6th grade. We heard tons of emails. That's the only thing left on this list that we got tons of emails about. I think that should be our first priority there.
The 6th grade?
The 6th grade.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I
Okay,
agree.
because we got emails about band, we got emails, and then we also did about world language.
So
I wanna keep
basically,
an ELA, I wanna keep the 6th grade, and then when it comes to the last elimination of a position, I want it to come from ones I think won't actually take a job away from someone.
Sorry, Jen, can you repeat that last sentence you just said? Because it cut out.
I'd like to keep the 6th grade intact. I'd like to keep the ELA teacher, because we're already reducing by 1. And then we still have an additional science position on the list, but I'd like to relook at science versus world language versus whatever, where there's not a person who will be impacted there, because losing a position there is all bad, but losing a person and a position, I'd like to negate. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and if there's a historical emptiness in para seats, if we reduce it from 17 to 16, and there's been 8 open for 6 years, I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, or even 15.
Exactly,
Two.
yeah.
Maybe two.
Right.
I'll preface this again, I know I'm new here, but we have $100,414 line item, whatever this is, 300. Purchase professional technical consulting services. Is this something that we can cut 10% and only spend maybe 90,000 on outside consulting services, or 75,000 out of 100,000? Or am I misreading this line item? If this is
Could I add on to that question?
full
Could I add
necessary or not?
Could I add on to that question?
Oh, absolutely.
What is included? I know what's written, I don't have it in front of me, but what is included in that?
Purchase professional
we've
technical
had a couple of
consulting
months to do
services.
this, right? And you've asked a lot of FAQ questions that you've gotten answers to. I think we want to be careful about, for instance, consulting services, things like that. They can fall into special ed things that we have to do. So we can't just say, let's just lop off 10%. You have to have a strategy for what you're doing. It's not just 10% here or 5% there, because you're gonna overrun those lines and I would advise against, again, looking at those paras like they're not filled, because they are filled with other people. But to give you an example of how you might be able to work this within a reasonable amount of time and not go home at 4 AM, is you have the alternative options so far, 172.5, if we do the whole salary line variance reduction and the ERF additional take. If I eliminate everything that has to do with Windows 11, which, by the way, that's next year then,
Understood.
all of it's next year, you're doing the same thing next year. You're at the 172.5, if you put back the two sixth grade teachers, what you have left from the 172.5 is roughly, let's just say 66. So then you can tell me, do you want me to look at something else for the 66? Like one other teacher, I can look at one other teacher for the 66.
Yes.
Which teaching position do you want me to look at? See,
Yeah. So it's ELA, science, or when we're already not
Do you
talking about
wanna-
librarian, right? We're letting that go. We have to let that go.
the ELA, let's say you want to put back ELA, that's another, say, 56, 188, roughly, you know, could be up to 60. And if I take that then, and let's just say you want to put the ELA back. Hey, 56. You're down to 10,000 of the 172.5, and you've restored 3 positions, but asterisks, and I'm not saying I don't agree with that, but it's on the future now,
So,
put back.
so the way the ask stands, if I read it right now, we would take the 50K from the personnel line, the 30K from the additional ERF, we would delay the Windows 11 upgrades, up to totaling approximately 172K. With that money, we would restore the 2 sixth grade positions and the ELA position.
With, nah, I feel like a piece of what I said is being ignored.
Somebody more.
I would also like to, before we just sit here and say science, I would like to look at it again. There's been changes. Maybe other people are thinking about retiring, maybe other people are looking at other jobs. I don't know what that is. I just want to look at it again, because losing a position is not okay with me on any of these, but losing a position and a person is definitely not okay. So if there's any scenario that we can choose a different position that doesn't also lose a person's job, I would like that looked at one more time.
It fluctuates. You're basing your decision on a fluctuating factor that could change tomorrow and be different people. And I'm not saying I don't understand the reason for wanting to do that, but I don't think you want to come out of tonight with people knowing what you're doing. Because we have to talk about that tomorrow, and they're either gonna vote for your budget or not vote for your budget based on what is being done here. And if you leave it too open-ended, then people will leave thinking it's them, and that'll cost us all our investments. in
Okay,
our
so
training.
right now, tonight, we know that the science teacher is the best option of every other position in the district, right now,
Rather than the,
as of
Well, I-
9:38
These
PM
positions
on,
determined because of meetings we had, many meetings with how this would fall down. And no one loves it, but it has, the least impact that that if you're gonna have an impact, it's the attempt to have it have the least impact, which means if there are people that, would be retiring. For instance, somebody might retire in math sometime and they may not tell us until June, but you can't make a decision on it because they might not do that because they their kids in college and they wanna make sure they're there for another
I'm not
year.
thinking about future decisions.
So
I just
what I'm
want to know
saying
what
is
the
that,
data we have right now.
that factor can fluctuate. But I wouldn't throw world language out there serendipitously. That's why I have in the back of my mind, if you say not this, something else, I would say world language, because there's reasons for that right now. That may be in the situation that you're describing, but I can't tell you for certainty it is, because I can't tell you exactly what's gonna happen with that person or situation.
But if we make this decision tonight, then, and whatever information you may have comes true, we've already decided to eliminate the science position and we can't make that change.
When you we have to walk out of here tonight, and these people equate to specific numbers, and they're also gonna bump. And I have to let people know by May 1st who we're bumping. Also, if people think it's them when it's not, because this is already happening to you, people that we have trained and invested money in other areas are going to leave because they're afraid it's them. We're better off identifying who this is tonight than not doing that from an operational point of view, because you will lose your capital, your investment in these people at different levels.
so let me ask, do I have a motion?
I just want to ask one last question. Dr. Willett, in your opinion, based on the school, the students' needs and stuff, is it better for us to keep the ELA teacher or the science teacher? If you were going to recommend, and I know you don't, they're bad,
So Sophie's choice for the ELA.
right? You would
Keep the ELA.
keep the ELA. Okay, I just want to make sure that you're thinking similar.
So I would entertain a motion.
So, no. Make a motion to accept Dr. Willet's proposal with the addition of reducing $50,000 from the salary line, adding an additional $30,000 of money coming out of ERF. Not reducing the sixth grade to 2 sixth grade teachers and not reducing the ELA teacher. Oh, and money from the tech,
Right, you're basically taking a salary line variance reduction of 50, an
50,
ERF
right.
additional reduction of 30. You're not doing the Windows upgrade.
the Windows upgrade.
And that total is 172.5. And with that, you want to restore 2
Two.
sixth grade positions and 1 high school ELA position.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's.
Do you get that?
Do I have a second?
I would second.
Discussion.
Yeah, so I second it for sure. I'm happy to go to the vote. Like, obviously, it's not what any of us want, but just, I guess, kind of a question is, are we just scratching the surface right now as well? Like the 3.91, that goes
If
400,000, let's say they vote on that. And then town says absolutely not to 3.91. Now we just have to come back and just.
We're back here again, yeah.
it's all over.
Yeah.
Fair. So it's a starting point, but we're gonna be back.
The hope is if the referendum passes, and this is what we got. If it doesn't, we're back at the table.
Okay, understood.
We're in some trouble. Any other discussion? Stand by.
Are we still continuing to look at everything as we progress through the year and save whatever people we can?
Well, always.
Meaning like we did last year where we eliminated a math coach, but then we found another position. Unfortunately, he had already taken another job, but
Well,
Are we going
so what
to
happens
continue to-
there is somebody resigns and
I
that
understand.
math coach doesn't come back, they bump into the
I
job.
understand.
So anywhere that someone, like, let's say someone decides they're sick of it 2 months from now, and they just retire at a lower percentage than they would have otherwise accepted, et cetera, and that's open, and someone's gonna lose their job, of course, we would.
If
bump someone in.
Dr. Willett, I'm publicly asking you
Yeah,
as a Board of Ed member, that you continue to look for alternatives to save people's jobs, understand positions are gone, which is contrary to the narrative that is out there that we are presented with every year that, oh, something, it always changes and fixes. I am asking you to ensure that you continue to do that.
Yeah.
And that if anything opens up, we continue to try to move people into those open positions.
yeah, they're off those positions.
Other discussion? All right. You ready? Let's vote. Brian,
Nay.
Rini,
Aye.
Jen,
Can I ask for a moment, please?
yep, Dan,
Aye.
Jaden,
Aye.
Katie,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
and I, Jen.
Aye.
Well, motion passes. I will entertain a motion to dismiss. So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? No. Vote Brian,
Aye.
Rini,
aye.
Jaden, Dan,
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Katie,
Aye.
Dana.
Aye.
Well, thank you all. Thank you.